Production by Liang Gu, Cemetery, author, Mu Ying. When I returned to the dormitory that day, I was so surprised for a long time by your talking mouth that I forgot about my hunger. I looked at the blue sky and thought about how talkative you would be in front of my lover. Living like a nunnery. It's so lonely. If this continues, even the soul will turn into a stone. But come and see me once. Rongzi. Clara's words danced playfully on the pink paper, surrounding me. Oh no, I became scared. The first time I saw her, I thought, what a dangerous animal. She has the body of a snake and the head of a cat, a mixture of gentleness and danger. She is wearing a long red silk cheongsam, standing on the breeze, with the corners of her robe fluttering. As soon as you look at these feet, you can tell they are a pair of dancing ones. Foot. Walking on Begonia's lovely red satin high-heeled shoes. Think of your waist as the neck of a vase, and a brilliant peony blooms from it. A mouth that can lie, a pair of eyes that can deceive, what a precious product. I have suffered losses before. I know very well that my straightforward personality is not enough to deal with the lying mouth of girls. I have only met her 3 times, and I always have the mood of pay attention, thinking like this while listening to her words that are full of sujo flavor from her mouth. Can this innocent mouth also lie? Maybe. He quickly built a high wall with his will between himself and her. The first time she attacked me without any hesitation. Until now. This dangerous animal has become like a friend for more than 10 years. I won't be fooled again this time, right? I didn't pursue them, they came to capture me. Every time I returned to the room, I would lie on the bed and dissect like this. It would be dangerous to go see her again. I am originally an imbecile when it comes to love. Without thinking, I wrote her a reply that started with, "I'm very busy at work." In fact, I was so free that I wanted to take a shower. Coming back from school, combing her hair. Suddenly I found a blue envelope on the table. When I cut it open, it was, "Why don't you put the matter of coming to see me in your work schedule? Come and see me once. Wait at the school gate. There's nothing you can do about it," such stubborn and adorable childish words. I put on my coat, smoked a strong custard, and walked to the school gate. She was already there. At this time, the long coal road is very suitable for walking, the fields with wheat ears, a few desolate graves, and the distant countryside buried in the wheat. A swarm of crows flew across the sky. You really love smoking. A lonely man treats cigarettes as his lover. It often comes to visit me when I am lonely, in the car, in bed, when I am meditating, when I am tired, even in the bathhouse. Will come too. Maybe some people say it's impolite, but we are old friends. I am surrounded by beer-like men every day, so meeting someone new like you will stimulate my appetite. Oops, she treats me as a spicy irritant. Then your stomach is not healthy either. That was all done to me by men. Their timidity, their ignorance, their mouse-like eyes, their pretended sad faces, can all cause indigestion in me. This can only be blamed on girls who like to eat snacks too much. You put Nestle brand chocolate candies. If you mix Sunkist, Shanghai beer, roasted chestnuts with sugar, peanuts, etc. and swallow them together, you will naturally suffer from indigestion. I'll give you the excreted chocolate candy, Sunkist. Can you stop pretending to be sad? So I want to eat some stimulants. Stimulants are unsuitable for dyspepsia. But, what the heck? There are a lot of people excreting it for you, right? I am suffering from constipation and want to excrete them, but they refuse to come out. It is really embarrassing. They all put their hearts before me. They look like clowns who have been beaten. I just think of them as fools. It's dangerous. Wouldn't I swallow it like chocolate candy for her and then excrete it? However, she is as straightforward as me. I looked at her red diamond-like mouth. They look like clowns who have been beaten. I just think of them as fools. It's dangerous. Wouldn't I swallow it like chocolate candy for her and then excrete it? However, she is as straightforward as me. I looked at her red diamond-like mouth. Could this mouth also tell lies? So doubtful. She knelt down and picked a purple wild flower next to the road, and pinned it on her lapel for me. Do you know the name of this flower? Tell me. This is called forget-me-not, and smiled brightly. Oh my gosh, I'm worried again. It was already in her mouth, being held like a chocolate candy. I quickly let the germs that are disgusting to women reproduce in my blood at an accelerated rate. Not daring to look at her slightly tilted head, she walked forward and sat down on a piece of grass. There is a sloping soil slope on the grass, with a willow tree on it. Lying under the willow branch, looking at the thin shadow covering her body, Rongzi sat there and played with grass seeds. You are a misogynist. From the custard smoke, I saw her proud nose. Eyes that mock me, mouth that is disappointed. Tell me where your germs came from. A gift from a lying girl. So you're just spreading your germs in magazines, aren't you? What a nasty person. My bug is a blind recipe for indigestion in girls. You really don't make girls annoying. You listen to me as I read a poem. I read Louise Gilmore's impromptu poem. If I were a peacock. I want to use 1,000 eyes. Looking at you. If I were a centipede. I'm going to use 100 feet. Track you. If I were an octopus. I'm going to use 8 arms. Hugs to you. If I were a cat. I will use my 9 lives. Falling in love with you. If I were a god. I'm going to use 3 bodies. Possess you. She was silent, but I could tell she was thinking, what a disgusting person. I just pretended to be ignorant, but now I'm here again. Go back. Why do you want to go back? Men are fools, she said angrily. It doesn't look like a mouth that can lie. I walked back with her on the road covered with dusk cinders, rustling the ground. A few days in a row, I came back from the golf course, took my tennis racket, went to the hotel, filled my stomach with afternoon tea, and walked back to the dormitory comfortably. 5 minutes later, when I was sitting on the grass waiting for dinner, I took my books from the classroom and walked to the sports hall for a stroll. I always saw her running from the dormitory to the school bus at the school gate, or from the school bus. Go back to the dormitory. Saw me. Just a casual greeting, but no letter came. That night, when I was about to go to the library, a letter came. Come to my place once, you know. It was like an order. Going there again. Wouldn't it be better to just forget it? I found myself standing next to a dangerous abyss. But, in the end, I ran away again. The moon is out, over there, in the corner of the palace-like dormitory, crimson and as big as a basin. Leaving the moon behind, she and I walked silently outside the school gate. Walking along the coal dust road, the road seemed to flow into the horizon. The light of a car suddenly emerged from the horizon. The girl smoking a custard brand on the billboard beside the road was in the light. Laughing happily, he disappeared again and came to a bridge. So I stood leaning against the railing, blowing smoke toward the moon. Have your indigestion been cured recently? It's getting better, but it happened again today. So we need stimulants again, right? Her face smiled in the custard smoke. I'll read a poem to you. She faces the moon. Lean on the railing. I looked at her back in the water. If I were a peacock, I want to use 1,000 eyes. Looking at you. If I were a centipede, I'm going to use 100 feet. Track you. What if I grabbed her hand. She raised her head slightly. She closed her eyes slightly. Her eyelids were purple under the silver moonlight. On her flower-like lips, she tasted the intoxicating taste of wine as if drinking wine. On the other hand, I probably won't suffer any loss. He was so happy. The moon shines on my back. The cigarette fell into the water, like shooting stars, and under his own eyes, he found a pair of big black jade eyes. I fell in love with you as soon as I saw you. She buried her lovely head in my arms and smiled playfully. You are the only one I am looking for. Where? What a lovely masculine face, straight and modern, gentle eyes, sensible mouth. I let her lying mouth spit out Allegro's words like beer foam. This mouth can't lie. When I got to the dormitory, I thought about it again. Someone was playing a saxophone at the window upstairs, and the spring breeze blew into my face and rolled up my collar. Oh my God. Oh my God. I thought about it the next day and felt it was dangerous. She is a dangerous animal and I am not a good hunter. Is it considered caught now? Or am I caught by her? But at least. I became worried as if I couldn't solve the equation. In the evening, she wrote a letter and said innocently, "What a disgusting person. I thought you had to come to see me today, but I didn't know you came. Is already my prey. Are you still so stubborn?" I didn't dare to read any more. Didn't I make it very clear? I can't be her prey. I threw the letter on the table and went to the Book City, Manuscript Mountain, and Mahjong River. Go hide. But that's bad. I feel like every word is her lip print. Vilma Banky's eyes nailed on the wall look like hers. Nancy Carroll's smile also looks like hers. And the strangest thing is that her nose is as long as normal. Shearer's face went. Finally, the flower on the lips is blooming on the penholder, on Tolstoy's bald head, on the old paper. It is blooming on the lampshade painted with roses. Pick up the letter and read it again. Are you afraid of me? Are you as timid as other men? The moon tonight staggered over to the willow branch over there, as if covered with a layer of fog. But I love to see that face of yours, on the flat lines. It is a miracle to project a straight line into the air to form a three-dimensional sketch. Such an exciting, fresh sentence. Let's go again, such a lovely sentence. These fresh sentences composed of Clara's treasure-like words surround me. Hands tied together and dancing on a black background, they pulled me to the palace. They could pull all the men in the world there. Sitting on the stone steps, holding her chin in her hands and tilting her head, it was Romsey who sang a serenade in a low voice next to the roses, under the dim light of the door lamp. Her dove-like shadow was carved on the ground, stepping from the darkness into the mist of light. She had already jumped over with a smile. Don't you want to run away from me? Why are you here again? Aren't you waiting for me? I'm just sitting here watching the night because I'm bored. Isn't there fresh tangy on your mouth? What a disgusting person. She had already taken my arm and walked into the dark sports field. She walked from the light to the fusion line of light and shadow, and then stopped in the darkness. It seemed as if she was saying, "You forgot." Looking at me as if. "Romsey, you love me, right?" "Yes." This mouth cannot lie, so I kissed this mouth that does not lie. "Romsey, what happened to those recreational products?" "Recreational products are not just recreational products. Didn't you also say you love him in front of the entertainment products?" This is all because men are stupid. If you don't tell them, they will follow you like a beggar, pretending to be begging, a despicable face, a hateful face, a fawning face. When you meet the beggar who follows you crookedly, ladies, you can only give me 1 copper, right? Maybe she was using me as a recreational tool. I kept my head down. Actually, there is no need to say whether you love or not, as long as you know the other person's heart is enough. I love you. Do you believe it? Really, do you believe it? Say it. I know you believe it. I looked at her deceptive and lying mouth and knew she was lying, but I still believed her lies. What a high-speed love. I love her, but she is a stranger to me. I don't understand her. Her thoughts, soul, and taste are things I don't recognize. The foundation of friendship has not yet been formed, but love has been built out of thin air. Every night, I would play the flute in front of her window and imitate the cuckoo call. She always jumped out like a child, singing a serenade in a low voice, and went to the dormitory door and called, "Alexei." I played the flute again and she came over. Stepping into the shadow of the plants from the dim light, she clung to the collar of my coat, always waiting for my kiss as if saying, "You forgot again." I gave her a gentle kiss and kissed her. She, just dash. She's not treating me like a recreational tool, I thought, but I wasn't the one clinging to her like a kid, she was the one clinging to me. From now on, she would hang on my arm like a cane, floating around. The corners of my skirt are wandering. I strive to build the foundation of friendship. Have you read La Traviata? This is what our grandmothers should have read. So do you like realism? For example, Nana by Zola, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I read it when I want to sleep. It's a good hypnotic dose for me. I like to read Paul Muhang, Yakimitsu Ricci, Hiraguchi University, Lewis. Yes, I love Lewis the most. What about in your own country? I like Lu Nao's new art, Guo Jianying's comics, and your rough writing and wild atmosphere. You are a girl who really lives on excitement and speed, Romsey. Jazz, machinery, speed, urban culture, American taste, beauty of the times, a collection of products. But the problem is here. Have you recovered from your misogyny? Yes, but what about your indigestion? Much better, just to eat less snacks. What new discoveries in 1931? The germ of gynophobia is a cure-all for stomach troubles. But, maybe on the contrary, the secretions of the indigestion stomach sac are the injection of gynophobia? Right, here's the problem. In other words, am I a good hunter of this dangerous animal, or am I an unlucky sheep? Really, going to see her has become part of my daily schedule, but other tasks can sometimes be omitted because of laziness. Every night. I sat on the edge of the pond on campus, listening to her tell Suzhou-style lies, and I also believed the lie. Looking at the shadows on the water and playing the flute in a low voice, it felt like I was dreaming. She counted the stars in the sky like a child, 1, 2, 3. I kissed her flower-like mouth once, twice, 3 times. What loneliness is there in life? What pain is there in life? The custard smoke dances like this, melting into the moonlight. She leaned on my shoulder, sang "Kiss Me Again," and kissed her again. 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. So, going to see her became a part of my life. Bathing, exercising, reading, sleeping, eating plus seeing her make up my life. Life cannot be changed casually. But how can this level of love be maintained? At this speed, it can already circle the earth 3 times. If this high-speed love loses its speed, it loses its excitement, then wouldn't Romsey, who lives on excitement, have to abandon it? Aren't you going to abandon me who is associated with this excitement? It's time to live with entertainment items again. It's just that I haven't excreted all those recreational products yet. It's really a tragedy to arrive at such a conclusion as if solving a formula. I thought of such a thing, but there was nothing I could do about it. One night, I wrote a letter to her. You cured my misogyny and gave me neurasthenia. I met such a fast-paced woman like you. Falling in love so quickly. Won't you abandon me at the same speed? Thinking about something like this makes me really worried. Tell me, Romsey, will there ever be a day when you don't love me? I never thought I would write such a letter. I am her prey. Didn't I also become a disguised person pestering her? Danger. Danger. I really suffered from neurasthenia, but her reply came, "Come tomorrow night, and I will tell you." This is the tone I used to speak to her. Nestle brand chocolate, sun-kissed, Shanghai beer, roasted chestnuts. I hope I am not these things. Dash. The next afternoon I thought of these things and felt melancholy for some reason. I ran to see Romsey. She had already gone out, and 100,000 tons of weight fell on my heart. He actually cares about her so much. When I returned to the dormitory, there was no one in the room. A dog was lying there lonely on the sports field outside the window, and it was making cute eyes with me. Wearing a felt hat, we walked along XX Road toward a garden opened by a Russian. I realized that something was missing, a girl to accompany me. Carry the girl as a walking stick. At least it's easier to walk. Rowing slowly under the willow shadows and singing Rio Rita in a low voice is also a good way to kill time. Standing on the shore was the Russian who was in charge of the village, drinking vodka leisurely and smoking strong Russian cigarettes. Looking at me. There are 2 white geese in the river, lying on the water, surrounded by round water circles. There were trees in the water, blue sky, white clouds, and suddenly another goat came. I looked back and saw that it was grazing on the bank. After rowing into the wilderness, he put the oar on the board of the boat and lay flat on his back. Put one hand in the water and look at the sky. Let the boat flow down the water as if it were flowing to the horizon. A lovely singing voice came, humming the tune of Minuet in G in a woman's highest voice, as if coming from the water. And he rested quietly among the smoke and water. But I know that song, it comes from that lying mouth. Slowly getting closer, you can hear the sound of paddling. I sat up, oh my God. It's Romsey. She leaned on the shoulder of another man, who had his dreaming eyes open. Looking over here. It's close, it's passing by. Alexei. Liao called me and waved to me. She had a white silk handkerchief wrapped around her shoulders, and the wind blew it back, revealing her smile in the corner of the fluttering handkerchief. I don't care about her. I feel like the germs of misogyny are running through my veins again. Shaking the oars desperately, unwilling to turn around, he fell down and lay on the board of the boat, let the water flow. Flow, flow to a place where there are no lying mouths, flow to a place where there are no flower-like mouths. Let it flow to a place where there are no deceitful mouths, ah. Flow, flow to the horizon, flow to a place without people, flow to the kingdom of dreams, flow to a place I don't know. But there is the cuckoo's call behind me. A cat's head appeared among the white clouds, with a gentle smiling face, and a white silk handkerchief floating on the music-like hair. I had just sat up halfway, and the red satin high-heeled shoes like crabapple flowers had already stepped over my body, and Rongzi sat next to me. It hangs like a bird on my shoulder and elbow. When I sat up, I saw the surprised face of the man on the boat. This face slowly lost its smile and turned into a depressed face. Rongzi. You go back. He was stunned for a while and then rode away. His back gradually became smaller. But his melancholy voice singing, "I belong to girl who belongs to the somebody else," floated gently over the water waves. Where's the fool? What's the matter? She shook violently and laughed like a silver bell dot. What's the matter? Look at your face in the water, an angry face. I also laughed. I really can't help it when I meet someone like her. Rongzi, you don't love me alone. Don't I love you? That man just now, right? Isn't it chocolate candy? Thinking about her willingness to jump from his boat into mine, thinking about his face like excreted chocolate candy. But, Rongzi, do you have any ideas? Love my day? She put her head on my shoulder and said with a sigh. Will there ever be a day when I don't love you? He raised his head and stroked my hair, so I believed her lie again. On the way back, I was happy. It was not a pastime after all. 3 days later, a new desire sprouted in my heart. It cured her constipation. I don't want her to talk about her love for them in front of her. If she doesn't listen to me, she doesn't love me as a person, so it's better to forget it. If this continues, my neurasthenia will get worse, it's decided. That night I said to Rongzi, excrete that shit. What else? Don't go out too often. What else? She laughed fiercely. What's the matter? You have become a fool too. Hearing this laughter, he suddenly became angry. After looking at her with hatred, he decided to leave. They treat me like a child. She caught up, stopped me, raised her head slightly, her big black jade-like eyes with long eye hair, caught my collar, Hate me? Jean looked at me as if he was afraid of losing something. No, Rongzi. Rongzi stood on tiptoes, as if holding a cat. That touch. Her words had a double meaning, making you know it was a lie and making you believe the lie. In front of her I lay as stiff as a target. Is there any way to resist her? However, on the surface it seems. I am still overcoming this dangerous and cute animal. Happy for the pride of being a good hunter. Rongzi hasn't gone out for more than 2 weeks. In front of me, she is crouching like a cat, like squatting on the carpet in front of the fireplace in winter. I marveled at her suppleness. At the end of the week, we were just around the school. We took a gramophone and went to picnic with me. She was lying on the soft grass, singing in the late spring wind, and running like a child in the wheat fields. Sitting on the top of the tomb, watching the sun sinking below the horizon, listening to the cuckoos in the fields, smiling, pointing to the tower of the cathedral in the distance and cuddling against me. I was happy. I love her with gentle hands and smart smile. The whole heart of 20-year-old youth. But there are days when a good hunter is overcome by a wild beast. On Saturday afternoon a letter came from her. I have to go to a party today. Don't go out, I'll be back in the evening. I know you want to go out. You must be going to the dance floor, but I don't want to know that you are holding another girl. At night, he imitated the call of the cuckoo at her window. Riding on the crimson light and escaping from the cracks in the curtains, I waited half an hour and was still serenaded, calling. Alexei voice. I understood that she was out. It sounded like beer, peanuts, chocolate candies, sun-kissed. The faces of those men who used recreational products were filled with hallucinations one by one. I walked up to it. On the bridge at the school gate, I wanted to wait for her to come back. Look at the man who took her back, the man who sat in the streetcar taking his girlfriend back at night. I understand very well the boldness of the man. The four lights on the bridge, their dim lights floating on the water, sat silently. Cars passed by one after another on the road. The car lights illuminated the shadows of the street trees and passed by again. None of them turned the corner and came to the school. Finally, the lovers who were walking in the night outside the school gate all came in. They knew me and were surprised. Eyes, 4x4, flashed in front of me. There was a saxophone pointed at me from the window of the dormitory. Love when you can love. A woman's heart, the weather of mildew and rain, is unpredictable. She yelled with her mouth wide open. Thinking about Romsey in someone else's arms, it felt like my heart was being ripped out. Until all the lights in the school were turned off, and in the desolate moonlight, with autumn leaves rustling in the autumn wind, I walked back alone, as melancholy as walking to the cemetery. I had breakfast on Sunday morning, took a pictorial of the report and sat on the grass to read it. A friend who hadn't slept enough came in from outside the school. He opened his eyes after drinking too much cocktail, stood with his legs still wrapped around the waltz, smiled at me and said, Romsey was in Paris yesterday, dancing like crazy. Oh, sorry. There were many men floating around her like water plants, all eager to hold her on their heads. At 4 or 5 o'clock, Romsey's letter came again. He put his fate in his hands and read. There is nothing I can do about it. After the party last night, it was too late. Return. I will definitely come back today, just wait for me. I stood at the school gate until the last bus entered the school gate, but she was still not there. So I went to Shanghai with my friends. The bumpy road bumped the car, and the car carried my body like luggage. Of shaking. My body disturbed my nerves, and thinking that I might meet her in the dance hall, I felt that I was suffering from a deep neurasthenia. First we went to Paris. Without her, we held a dance hall tour from the jazz wind, the dancing forest, and the laughter waves. Still no her. Returning to Paris, I danced like I lost my soul until around 11 o'clock. I saw Romsey. Romsey, who was unusually dressed up, came in with many men who looked like chocolate candies. So my feet stepped on the dancers' shoes, which was not enough, and even touched them. I sat there dejectedly, thinking about how to deal with it. Romsey was sitting at the table not far from us. Turning his back to her, he numbed his feelings with alcohol. I danced very fast and kissed the dancer affectionately in front of her. The alcohol burned my eyes red. I have lost my nerve. Back on the table, the waiter brought a piece of paper with an apple pressed on it. Why bother? What a fool. Eat this apple and calm down your nerves. Looking at your crazy eyes, I am in pain. Turn your head back. Those big black jade-like eyes were looking at me affectionately. I put my head in the middle of the wine glass and wanted to scold her. Foxtrot melodies slide across the glowing floor. Alexei. She danced to my table. I stood up straight. Fuck you, lying mouth, lying mouth. Friend, this is not the attitude of a gentleman. Look at yourself, you look like an angry bear. The man accompanying her made a mocking face. Get out of here, little brat. It's none of your business. Yeah, clap. His palm rang on my cheek. Say, what's the big idea? No, Alexei, say no, by golly. Romsey pulled my arm. Panicked, I pushed her away. You don't meant. I mean it. I punched hard and the man fell to the ground. When Romsey saw me hitting him hard, she sat down at the table with an emotionless poker face. My friends pulled me out. When I said, I'm through, what I felt was a sinful state of mind, feeling ashamed that I had done something stupid. For 3 days in a row, I was at home, beside my bed, writing the words of Stalinberg and reading articles that ridiculed women. Fiercely advocating for the patriarchal family system. Forget her. Forget her. But will I forget this lying Romsey? If Romsey couldn't lie, I would have forgotten her long ago. In the same school, it is inevitable to see this lying mouth every day. To me, she had a cold nose on her face. She ignored me for a week. However, those dancing feet are still standing on the lovely red satin high-heeled shoes of begonia. The corners of the robe are floating, as if standing on the breeze, wearing a long red silk cheongsam. A mixture of gentleness and danger, with the head of a cat and the body of a snake. During the commemoration week on Monday, I stood behind the ceiling of the auditorium, not daring to go to the front for fear of bumping into her. She also came and stood behind the roof, smiling playfully as if nothing had happened. I put on a beaten face and looked at her begging for forgiveness. The arms exposed outside the short sleeves once climbed up my collar. Looking back at my face, she wanted to laugh, but I wanted to cry. The classmates looked at me and asked me, and then ran over to see her and asked her. Many people looked at me. The Memorial Week was only halfway through, so I ran out. In the next class of modern history, my seat was next to hers. This lecturer, who wears glasses and shrugs his left shoulder, is famous for his research on Industrial Revolution. He just talked about this chapter that day. The friction of the pencil on the paper was carried out as fast as the lecturer's spitting. I just wrote on the paper, a deceiving mouth, a deceiving mouth. She laughed. Romsey. The red lips were like closed clams. I wrote on the piece of paper, lying mouth. But I am willing to believe your lies. Can you let me hear your lovely lies again? Hand it to her. After class, wait for me on the grass on XX Road. She remembered her notes again and ignored me. I went there to wait after class. It was already summer. The wheat grows to the waist, golden yellow, and the grass is deep. The vast fields are full of sunshine, but I don't know where the cuckoo cries, calling out the countryside in April. He sat on the grass like a murderer waiting for the verdict. Time has stood still, and she hasn't come for a long time. The school bells came again, lingering in the wheat fields and melting into the smoke from the farmhouses. Then, like a flying dove, came Romsey, wearing pajamas of white silk, her hair knotted under the white silk, dancing the tango. It reminds me of water lilies. You didn't want me to dance with that man that day, didn't you? My charges were mentioned so straightforwardly from the beginning that I had no other possibility of plea except to plead guilty. I raised my head and looked at the judge, who was standing tall and graceful, with eyes that asked for a lighter punishment. But can you take care of these things? Why do you use such a stupid method? If I like to hear what you say, I will naturally listen to you. If I don't like to hear it, you can't force me to obey. Do you understand? A few days ago, I ignored you because you were too stupid, but now you seem smarter, remember? She recited the regulations of the criminal law, and I could only lie on the ground and kiss her feet. She also sat down and put my head on her lap. He threw my messy hair back and said softly, "Remember, I love you, child. But you can't interfere with my actions." He kissed me gently again. I closed my eyes and smiled slightly. Rongzi called out like this, feeling happy. But this happiness belongs to the forgiven criminal. After all, it was her catch. Do you still think that women can only be worshipped by one person? Love can only love one person, but there can be many recreational products and tools. I'm afraid you don't have pictures of women in your pocket. Ah, Rongzi. From that day on, she was worshipped by many people, and I enjoyed the happiness of a sheep loved by a lion. I lost my resistance, and in the end, she simply restricted the number of times I could go out of school. Even if I went out, I would have to report to her window before 9 o'clock in the evening and imitate the cuckoo's call. Wouldn't I want to have such a restriction? No, I just took the 40-mile-an-hour bus back to school at 8:30. Going to her window to check in also made a Flelder like me feel happy. But she even restricted me from kissing her. But what can the sheep in front of the lion think about such a thing? Although I would trade a drop of blood for a kiss like a flower. I remember one night, she came back from being worshipped outside school. She wore a purple woolen single cheongsam. She was an expert in progress in decoration. People only know how to wear silk fabrics. While she makes men feel like eels, she can give you a gentle feeling from the material of her clothes. Rongzi was still singing serenades and walking like clouds. Under the silver moonlight, it looks like a big night butterfly with silver-purple wings. It flaps its wings calmly and lazily, bringing the breath of April, the fragrance of love, and the golden dream. He grabbed the big night butterfly and wiped the dark red Tangi's mouth as he wanted to swallow her. Putting the violets from my hair in my mouth, the big night butterfly flew away from my arm. With flowers in her mouth, she watched her fly away gracefully. The soles of her 2 high-heeled shoes were dancing in the night, and her laughter was still trembling in the night. When she caught her again, she hid in my arms and smiled. I really couldn't kiss her. Rongzi, a kiss. Purple kiss. Purple kisses are not given to greedy children. I lied to her, forced her, begged her, and seduced her, but she kept hiding in my arms. She is more alert than a mouse. It is not easy to be in my arms without letting me talk. That's it. Rongzi. If I cheat into a kiss, you'll have to kiss me 3 times a night this week. Yes, but you can't fool me this week. You are not allowed to ask to kiss me before the holiday, and you must say 100 compliments to me every day, which must be fresh and different every day. A war more violent than the European war, 3 kisses a day, or 100 compliments a day, fresh and different every day. Before deciding on a strategy, I took the liberty of declaring war. After she left behind a soft and warm fragrance. Flowing around me, this is the subtle organism born of our caress. In this place where the fragrance of love is lingering, I am waiting for the new night to transport her to my arms. But when a new night came, I didn't say this, and I didn't see her for 3 days in a row. On the 4th day, He held her hand, pretending to be sad, and shed 2 big tears in his eyes dripping with sulfuric acid. Rosie. I thought it was an act. What's wrong today? You seem very depressed. How should I put it? It's unexpected. I can't love you anymore. Give me a kiss. The last kiss. My heart is beating. Victory or defeat can be decided in this moment. She put her arms around my neck and kissed me. Her big black jade eyes flashed, and she smiled. She stood on tiptoes, kissed me once, twice, 3 times, smart boy. This week I lived contentedly eating purple tangy every night. But her lips were getting colder day by day, even though the weather was getting hotter day by day. It's almost time for vacation. My heart contracted as the examination form was posted on the notice board of the registration office. Rosie, are you slowly falling out of love with me? What a fool. There is no need to ask about this kind of thing. A sophisticated person would not expect women to tell the truth. Will they tell you if you just ask? What a fool. I won't be her entertainment, right? But they kiss each other every night. She has to attend more and more parties, and the time I spend with her gradually decreases. I feel depressed. I often hear people tell me who she plays with here. Who are you hanging out with? With a stern face, people thought I was anxious for the exam, but who knew that I just wanted the exam period to be as long as possible. Thinking about the fact that I am about to have a vacation, I have been deprived of the ability to study. I suffer a lot just because I was born into a rich family. Nothing is up to me, not even a lover. In Shanghai, I was monitored by people sent by my father, just like monitoring his own property and family status. Oh my gosh. He was busy looking for someone to play matchmaker for me. There are always 2 or 3 pictures of smiling men with slicked hair and wide ties sent in every week. I can find more pictures of women in the room than I have makeup to show you. I have 2 elder brother. When you meet me, you always bring a doctorate or master's degree. They were all middle-aged men with bruised faces and beards. They are all suffering from the disease of contempt. Once they accompanied me to the city hall to listen to music, but they did not shave their beards. It will grow again when you put on makeup. He laughed at me. Then why aren't you engaged yet? Doctors, masters, professors, aren't there many opportunities? Just because I only want to treat them as entertainment, something is wrong lately. My father is anxious to get me married. It's like clearing out the goods. Doesn't he love me very much? I really don't understand why I want to marry my beloved daughter. Wouldn't it be nice to stay with him for the rest of his life? I am most afraid that marriage, husband, children, and family affairs will really ruin my youth. Why should I get married? But there is nothing I can do now. My father is forcing me, saying that if I don't listen to him, I will not be allowed to study in Shanghai next semester. To get married, I have to choose an ugly and stupid man to be my husband. A smart husband cannot be manipulated by his wife. I love him when I am happy to love him. He is not allowed to touch me unless he is happy. A lovely lover, an ugly husband, and a non-irritating pastime. Wouldn't a life arranged in this way not make you feel lonely? Do you want to get engaged? Rosie stopped talking, bit her lower lip and sang a serenade in a low voice, but suddenly I shed tears, like pearls. 1, 2. Isn't it? I asked. Yes, I am the son of a banker. He seems to admire me for something. He seems to be satisfied as long as he holds my feet and becomes his husband. Little fat man, what are you going to give me as part of our engagement ceremony? The thread of conversation was cut off here, and worries and doubts, thoughts and sorrows, were swirling around in my mind like mixed wine. Rongzi stood in the moonlight. Everything I just said is a lie to you. I have been engaged for a long time. My fiancé is in America and will be back this summer. He is a very strong man. When he was in China, he was the school representative in football. At that time, he often stroked my head and called me little sister. But when he comes back, I will introduce you to her. Have you been engaged for a long time? What's the matter? Are you scared? I lied to you, I'm not engaged. I don't want to get engaged either. Look at your own frightened face. If you took what the woman thought of at that moment as true, would you become a lunatic? I've been crazy for a long time. You see, it's so. I ran away without looking back. After finishing the exam, she became ill. The doctor said that I ate too much sugar and my stomach was weak and couldn't digest it. I rode a bicycle 10 miles under the June sun to XX University to find her best friend to accompany her. I was afraid that she would be lonely, so I went to Shanghai and bought a large bunch of Donaldson to put beside her bed. Had a meal. I went to her dormitory and stood there, my head bare, and I didn't dare to say a word. Watching the sun standing above my head, watching the sun shining on my face, watching the sun moving to the base of the wall, watching the sun hiding behind the ridge of the roof, watching the sun sinking below the harvested fields. Looking at Rongzi sleeping peacefully inside the white gauze tent, he forgot about his own body soaked in salt water. In my dream, I also remembered Rongzi, fearing that she would lose weight due to illness and have big black jade eyes. The next day I ran to see her. All the classmates in her room had left, the quilt on the bed was messy, and the white Donaldson hung his head, wilting in loneliness. But I couldn't find those familiar big eyes and that cute voice that called me Alexei. I asked my grandma. Only then did she realize that it was her father who had come to take it back. Are you afraid that you will never see her again? I stared outside the window for a long time. It was raining lightly. In the rain, slowly, like the egg sound of fallen leaves, I walked back. A car full of luggage bumps along with the luggage and people. Then drive outside the school gate. Wandering next to the desolate sports ground, that long cinder road, that bronze street lamp, that pond with floating algae, that vast field, my love is buried here, and Rongzi's smile. She didn't come back until evening. I'm going home tomorrow, so I came here to pack my luggage. I had nothing to say and sat across from each other in silence. I went to their dormitory and locked the door, then went to stand in front of her window. It was raining outside, so I stood in the rain. She really lost weight. Then the big eyes are melancholy. Why is Rongzi melancholy? Why do you ask it? Tell me, Rongzi, I think you don't love me any more recently. Do you still love me? But why do you ask it? After a while. You love me, right? Will you always love me? Yes, Rongzi, with my whole heart. She hugged my neck through the bars on the window, kissed me and said, "Then love me forever." Then she lowered her head silently. On the way back, I realized that my back was wet from the rain and my stomach didn't have dinner. Tomorrow morning I met Rongzi again in front of the stone steps of the classroom. Goodbye. Goodbye. Then she went, like fallen leaves in autumn, in the slanting wind and drizzle, under the blue oil paper umbrella, stepping step by step on her lovely red satin high heels. Think back. He cast a look as if he wanted to tell me something, and then walked low, low, singing a serenade to the tune of a serenade, and walked into the wicker. I stood there, the drizzle bringing me sadness. After a long time, I ran to her window. All the people in their dormitory have left. There was an empty bed and an empty table in the room. The picture of Clara Bowen nailed to the wall smiled lonely, and Donaldson was lying on the floor. The cry of the cuckoo came from the fields where the wheat had been cut. I also learned it. This lonely cry circled around the room and then disappeared. Walking out of the coal dust road under the drizzle in June, when I look back, the willow branches have been mixed with the dusk. Play the tune of Souvenir on the flute. I took the last bus to Shanghai. I wrote 8 letters, but no reply came. On the road, with crazy eyes, I saw every girl in red clothes, and rushed to see her as if my heart was about to jump out of my mouth, but it was not her. Not her. In the dance hall, I sat silently, looking at the dancing feet, trying to find those cute feet on the nice-looking red satin high heels. I captured every pair of feet I saw, but no she. Not her. Go to Leva Lita village and paddle slowly on the river. Listening to every song floating from the water, I want to hear the low serenade. But there is no her. There is no her. At the banquet, I looked at every eyeball, trying to find the familiar pair of black eyes that seemed to hide the secrets of the East, every eye. The brown eyes, the eyes with long eyelashes, the eyes that could talk, all looked frightened under my searching eyes. But it's not her. Not her. At home, I check the mailbox every hour and worry about every letter I receive. I want to find the word that dances like Clara's baby. But it's not her. Not her. Every time I heard my name being called, my ears pricked up like a wolf, wanting to hear the longing cry of Alexei. But it's not her. Not her. Look everywhere for a mouth that tells lies like flowers, a mouth that deceives others. But it's not her. It's not her. She once told me that she might be staying at her aunt's house. She also told me that her aunt was on Jing'an Temple Road and gave me the house number. Finally, I decided to go look for it. Maybe I will be insulted by her aunt, or even kicked out, but I only want to see my Rongzi once. In the June sun, I walked from Jing'an Temple to the racecourse, then back, then here, then there, and there was no such house number at all. The June sun left for 4 or 5 days in a row, and I fell ill. During the illness, maybe she's not in Shanghai. This is how she comforted herself. Lao Liao, a friend who had graduated, was returning to Sichuan, and I went to see him off on the boat. Last night I saw Rongzi dancing with a man who was not you in Paris. I heard the sound of the tiny tissues in my mind collapsing for a moment. Later, another friend came to see her off and said it again. In this case, they are all my good friends. They all know mine. Forget it. After all, it's regret. After hearing these words of persuasion, I smiled like a chocolate candy that had been excreted. Lao Liao plays the guitar, the water of Huangpu River. There are golden fish scales under the moon. I remained silent. It's just a recreational product after all. When I came back, I was sad with all my 20-year-old heart. A lonely man should buy a cane. The next day I bought a cane. It stays with me, along with the custard cigarettes. All day long, walking on the road of life step by step. The lotus falls. Wandering, the ground is like sodium yellow leaves in autumn, one mountain after another, one water after another, we are two people. Along with a sandalwood board and a huqin, they traveled from one city to another. In front of the firewood gate of the thatched house, in front of the black gate embedded in the middle of the palace wall, on the street, in the examination room, we sang the song, Lotus Blossoms Fall, and turned a copper into others, a cup of soup, a bowl of cold rice. We are two people. Yes, we are two people, but she died yesterday. 20 years ago, when my hair was as black as my eyes, the soldiers bombed my home. The whole family died and ran away without knowing where they were going. I ran south alone, and by the evening I was really tired. Just run to the pavilion in front. That's where I met her. She was inside, sitting on the ground crying, sobbing so hard. I was still shy at that time, so I sat farther away. She glanced at me secretly and cried softly. I thought to myself, please persuade her. Why is this girl crying here alone? Stop crying, girl. Why are you crying? I said to her while sitting far away. She kept crying, but she just cried louder. Isn't this a bad thing? I dare not speak anymore. I looked outside the pavilion, not daring to look at her. It was dark, and a crescent moon was shining on those fields. I can't find any fire, not far away. A dog stood outside the pavilion and looked at me. I remember it was a black dog. We also have a black dog at home, our cow is yellow, and we have a black chicken with nice-looking fur. I have wanted to kill it for 3 years but have not had the heart to kill it. We also have a tabby cat. My sister loves that cat the most, and my father hates it because it loves to steal. But my mother loves my sister, and my father loves me. The tabby cat ate something secretly, and my father wanted to chop off its head. My sister hugged her and wouldn't let go, so my father beat her. My mother would hit me when she heard her cry. When I made a fuss, my father and mother would start bickering. But where is Dad? Where have my mother and sister gone? And what about the black dog, the ox, and the tabby cat? Where have they gone? I thought about it and wanted to cry, but she didn't know when she stopped. Stop crying. I turned my head to take a look, and she quickly turned her head back too. She was afraid of being embarrassed and wouldn't let me see her face, so I looked at her from behind. She didn't know what she was eating there, but it was so sweet and delicious that it made me salivate after swallowing. It sounded like thunder late at night. She turned her head to look, and I swallowed hard for some reason, and she burst into laughter. I was so embarrassed. She took out a steamed bun and held it with her arms stretched out from a distance. I don't care about being embarrassed either. I ran over to eat with a red face and didn't dare to speak. After I finished eating, I watched her eat. She still had 5 more. As soon as she raised her head, I quickly turned my eyes to the side. But she gave me another one. My face was really red and hot. Thank you, I said. Finished eating. She gave me 2 more. Thank you so much, I said. Do you want more? How can I say it's not enough? I say enough is enough. Aren't you hungry? Such a man eats so much. If you're not hungry, why are you here alone? The whole family is dead. Her eyelids turned red. I want to cry again. I hurriedly kept silent. After a while, when she was well, I said, "What's the matter?" "They fought and killed our whole family." "Where are you going?" "Where can I go?" "Where are you going to escape?" I didn't plan to escape anywhere, so I brought a few steamed buns with me. You came here as soon as you ran away. How about you? I didn't even bring any food, and I didn't ask the soldiers to kill me. I'm still lucky. So where can I plan to run? It doesn't matter where you run. At that time, she and I were sitting closer and closer. I waved my hand and touched her hand, and I smiled. He moved his body embarrassedly. Would you rather sit further away? I moved away a little bit and sat talking to each other from a distance. It was really getting late, the stars in the sky were so dense. You squeezed me, I squeezed you, as if I wanted to squeeze someone down. The grass outside the pavilion was wet with dew, and a few fallen trees in the distance extended their branches toward the moon. A gust of wind blew over, and I felt a little cold. A night bird called outside the pavilion. The sound was quite strange, like a ghost crying, and it was chilling. Then came a gust of wind. She drew her neck back and shivered. I glanced at her. Would you rather sit over here? She said. Are you cold? I'm afraid. I moved over and sat down next to her. As soon as I got close to her body, she shrank and said, You don't know how, and looked at me. I shook my head. She leaned on me and said, I'm tired. Just closed his eyes. I looked at her and lost all my fatigue and loneliness. I think, I am not living alone in the world, I am in this pavilion with her, we are two people. Get up the next day. She has burnt red cheeks, unruly eyebrows, and the virginity in her eyes was stolen by a thief last night. She looked at the sky, at the sun, and then at me, then she covered her face and started crying. I didn't dare to say anything, I knew I had done something wrong. She cried for a while, then raised her head, pointed her finger at my nose and said, It's all you. I lowered my head. You said you wouldn't. I can't think of it. She cried again, crying for a while and said, What do you want me to do? Let's go together. Let's go south together. I didn't know where to go. She didn't speak on the way, and I didn't dare to speak either. When we got to a town, she said, I'm really hungry. I ran to a big cake shop and begged the shopkeeper, Sir, please take pity on me. I'm starving. My whole family was beaten by the soldiers. I knelt all day and night. Nothing to eat. The shopkeeper didn't seem to hear. I had to walk away, and she was standing there at the corner, waiting for me with a complaining face. I had no choice but to walk in front of a silk and satin shop, and somehow I remembered the lotus fell, and he lowered his head, Hey, hey. Flowers bloom and plum blossoms fall. A plum blossom blooms. Winter sweet. I felt my face getting red, and there were many people watching me around. I really wanted to crawl into the ground. At this time, I suddenly heard someone singing along with me. When I saw it, it was her. I picked up 2 pieces of broken bamboo from somewhere. I held them in my hands and patted them proudly. I became so angry that I immediately puffed up my chest, raised my head, and sang Lotus Falling loudly. We were 2 people singing. From that day on, I wandered like autumn leaves. From this city to that city. Later, we got another broken huqin, and together with the huqin and the sandalwood board, we walked together, mountain after mountain, water after water, in front of the wood door of the thatched cottage and in front of the black door. Singing the Lotus Falls. Last night we were sitting in a small alley. She was a little cold, so she snuggled next to me, looked at my hair and said, Your hair is a little gray too. Isn't it true? If you are over 40, your hair will not turn gray. It has been more than 20 years since we ran away from the pavilion. almost 30 years. Time flies so fast. Do you still remember, one year when we were in Hunan, we didn't get anything to eat for 3 days? You were so angry at that time that for some reason you hit me as soon as you came, leaving a big bruise on my waist. Do you remember? Didn't you scratch my face? Isn't that night in the pavilion very much like today? I raised my head. Over the eaves, there was a crescent moon, shining all the black tiles into silver dot. But I am so tired. She leaned her head on my shoulder. It was so heavy. I didn't pay attention to it. Just look at the moon, but she just dies like that. Along with a pair of sandalwood boards and a huqin, together, water after water, mountain after mountain, in front of the wood door of the thatched cottage, in front of the black gate, on the street, in the wheat field, we sang together the Lotus Falls. We laughed and cried together, sighed together and wiped tears together. There is me and she in the world, we are two people. Yes, we are two people, but she died last night. Cemetery. 1. Black marble, white marble. Under this pure marble, my mother lay quietly. The tombstone was written by my own son. The tomb of Mrs. Su's mother, Mrs. Chen. Book of Air Kuyuan on February 15th, 18th year of the Republic of China. 2. April, happy season. In the suburbs, the wind from the south is blowing the breath of late spring. There is a clear sun and blue sky here. Every little wild flower has a smile. There is no jazz music here, no three-dimensional buildings, and no female secretary flirting with the manager. The fields are vast, the road is long, the air is quiet, and the gentleman on the billboard cannot speak. Only smokes. In front of my mother's grave, I was pure and happy. I had the heart of a child. Every morning, I would run there alone, buy a bouquet of flowers, and place them in front of my mother's grave. Then I would sit next to the evergreen tree and look at the sky. Missing my lonely mother far away. I always bring a collection of poems to read while lying on the grass. I also bring a harmonica to play the 8th symphony that my mother loves to listen to. But I didn't smoke in front of my mother's grave because she hated smoking. The tombkeeper goes there every day because of me. He became familiar with me and often came to talk nonsense with me. I love to talk, and I would talk to him about my mother's temperament and what kind of person my mother is. He always told me about the residents of this dead town hall, about their homes, and about the people who came to visit them. There is also a girl named Ling who comes here from time to time. One day he said this, "It's like you have to sit down for such a long time." Why haven't I seen it? I've seen him. He's not very talkative, he's very cute, he looks about 18 or 19 years old, he's short. Sometimes she comes with her father. I remember, I have met Miss Ling a few times. She always wears lilac and is a little thinner. But I have no real impression of her face and body. I only remember the impression she gave me. A collection of contradictions. Sometimes it is a lilac with a light sadness, sometimes it is a happy white dove laughing under the bright sunshine. That tomb belongs to her family? Diagonally opposite, fourth to the right, there are flowers placed there. Do you see them? Miss Ling came here this morning. That tomb is very elegant. I once compared it with my mother's grave, and I still remember that it was Ouyang's. Isn't it Ouyang's? Yes, he is from Cantonese. Who of hers is dead? It's probably her mother. He is also an orphan who often comes here to stay with his mother. I just thought about it for a moment. Point 3. That day I came out of the cemetery and walked on the path among the ferns, but I saw her coming from the opposite side, so I took a good look at her. The wind with the cold feeling of the cemetery blew up the corners of her robe and stirred the dark sea in her hair, giving her a somewhat chic look. She has a pair of enigmatic eyes, a pale face, and her cheeks are a little burnt red. It is obvious at a glance that she is not very healthy. She reminds me of the transparent streams in the mountains, the mist at dusk, Mr. Dai Wangshu's Rain Alley, and the electrical advertisements covered with plum rain. We met several more times later. I always saw her sitting there alone with a silent smile, looking at the large white clouds on the horizon. The half-closed black crystal hides the mystery of the ancient eastern country. She always came alone. Only once did I see her and a few girls about her age having a picnic in the cemetery next to her mother's grave. They laughed loudly and talked. Her cheerful smile was contagious. Marbles, stone lions, half-broken ancient pillars, and Gerbras all shouted to me, "Happy April, the season of love." I smiled happily. The cuckoos sang the melancholy of lilac in the field. Walking along the country road to the school, I forgot to think back hungrily on her Cantonese-style nasal "u." I admired the bright southern country for the charm of this "u." I didn't see her go to the cemetery for 2 consecutive days. Her mother's grave was lonely with no flowers. I sat in front of my mother's grave, lowered my head and felt melancholy. Who am I waiting for? Waiting for the sound of the cathedral bell floating in the distance, waiting for a gust of evening breeze, waiting for a purple hazy dream. Are you waiting for her? I have no idea. Why wait for her? I don't know her. Is it because I miss my mother from Liaoyuan? Maybe yes. But when she comes, she will smile so happily. I understand this. On the 3rd day, I saw her looking at her mother's tombstone from a distance. I walked over with the same feeling I had when eating chocolate. Put the flower on the marble. You're here early today. He blushed, and was embarrassed when he saw the girl blushing. She just responded in a low voice and walked away calmly. Seeing her walking away, I fell down suddenly and lay on the grass. No mouth, no hands, no vision. There is no nerve center. I just want to jump up and fall down and jump up again. I am a trackless train. I want to shout loudly. I want to run. I want to fly. My body is filled with strength and heat. I am great. Suddenly I thought of showing it to others. Isn't it a joke? So crazy. I slowly calmed down, but my thoughts flew away at an accelerated speed, and my brain fiber tissue burst. It became so many electrons, jumping into the ether. Every electron is happy. It buzzed like a fly next to my ear. I was thinking about it, but what were I thinking about? I don't know what I was thinking there. I want to laugh, I smile. Am I suffering from spring fever? Mr. Su, all your flowers have been crushed by you. The gravekeeper was holding a cigarette but in the corner of his mouth and holding a pair of scissors for cutting small branches. I was lying on the flowers, and the flowers were really crushed by me. He was pruning and surrounding me there. Branches of the bushes at Mother's graveyard. I wanted to tell him that I told Miss Ling that I was happy, but it was a joke. Then he pulled up the grass on the ground and talked with him. At night I quietly said to my mother, "If you were next to me, I would tell you that your son is crazy." But who am I to tell now? My classmates are going to make fun of me. I slept until morning. At dawn, I sat up suddenly and looked out the window. There was no one on the playground, and the gentle tentacles of the sun were touching large pieces of land. I'm thinking about my dreams at night. Those dreams are flying like clouds, elusive. He lay down to sleep again, slept like a happy child. In the afternoon, I wore a wide tie. I like to wear collared shirts and don't like to wear ties. Walk along the long cinder road toward the cemetery. Gentle wind. The train was heading that way on the railway, shouting, exhaling, panting, and with sweat on its face. The other side was covered with a layer of smoke, making it difficult to see clearly. All we could see was the blue sky, the vast fields, the spire of the cathedral, and the green trees. The glass shed of the greenhouse reflects the sun's rays. There are old moss on the surface of the pond and willow trees on the bank. Next to the low fence bloomed a rose bush and a peach blossom. I broke off a poplar branch, cut off the branches and leaves, and used it as a walking stick. A French girl, wearing a white French hat, was riding over on a horse. Her smile smelled of the vineyards next to the Mediterranean Sea. I smiled, raised the wicker in my hand, and said, "Happy April. You give it a whip." I whipped the horse's leg, and the horse ran away. The French girl turned around and raised her arms. She is affectionate. The countryman carrying the vegetables also smiled at me. When I walked to the path leading to my mother's grave, I looked towards her grave. Among the evergreen trees next to the grave, her lavender cheongsam was exposed, standing there gracefully. Next to the roots of the tree. On the black silk high-heeled shoes, a pair of delicate feet. The purple lilac lay silently on the white marble, and the purple girl-ling lowered her head silently in the breeze. She is there too, existing with me under the blue sky. We existed in the middle of April, and the wind that blew her hair was the same wind that blew my wide tie. I am so happy for no reason. Go over and talk to her about our mother. Isn't it a bit rude to run over like this? But I really walked over, with an indifferent face, the face of a person who appreciates tombs as architectural art. She seemed to be thinking about something there, and when she saw me walking over, she looked obviously embarrassed. After saying hello, he avoided my sight. If you swallow a bomb, it's not a bomb. If you spit it out, it's not a bomb. If you don't spit it out, it's not a bomb. After a while, I will blush and be embarrassed again. Is this your mother's tomb? He finally said that. She remained silent, with a nostalgic smile on her innocent lips, and nodded her head. Going to the countryside to accompany my mother in such a sunny season is more interesting than anything else. I had no choice but to act funny as if I were alone, feeling that it was about to turn into a comedy scene. It's very interesting to sit here quietly and look at the blue sky. She sat down. He didn't look like he was ready to reject me. I often see you sitting there, on your mother's grave. Don't you come here every day? I come here almost every day. I also sat down, and at the same time, you won't blame me for being rude, right? I thought like this. My mother is very afraid of leeches. Mother. She looked into the distance again, smiling silently. There was a layer of mist on her sight and on her smile, hinting at a warm feeling. I drink too. As if drunk, he lay on her hazy vision and smile. I still remember that my mother helped me skip school and sent me to my aunt's house so that my father wouldn't know. The sweater my mother knitted for me. The sweater I wore when I was 3 years old is still in the small iron box where I keep my jewelry. My mother hated smoking and always snatched the cigars from my father's mouth. My mother loves white hibiscus, and I love lilacs. My father is a little afraid of my mother. my mother will cry even if I quarrel with my father. I saw my mother cry once. Mother. It is my mother who is lying quietly under this marble. My mother is also lying quietly under the marble over there. In the mood of missing my mother from far away, mixed with the good feeling of friendship between us. We chatted about my mother's life, like a pair of 5-year-old children. That night, I jumped around in circles in the room until I was tired before I went to bed. I lay down for a while and then sat up again. All the lights in the dormitory were turned off, and I looked at the silver sea-like playground, the shadow of the goal, and the trees in the distance. Thinking silently, smiling silently. 4. Sitting on the marble with her every day, listening to the silent falling flowers, leaning against the tombstone. Those who say she doesn't like to talk are wrong. As soon as she talks about her mother, her taciturn mouth stammers with lively words. It's the time of silence. Her eyes also speak mysterious words, words that only I can understand. She has the sensitivity of modern people, and her eyes are a temperature gauge of emotions. From there, I can guess the weather pressure and psychological weather. The girls should be placed in a suitable background. If Miss Ling exists in straight-line buildings, in clothes with strong colors of silver and red, black and white, in jazz and neon light, she would lose her grace, which was tinged with a touch of sadness. The tips of her frowning eyebrows are suitable for the white marble tombstones vertically on the ground, the rows of evergreen trees, and the desolate smell of dead flowers. Her bright tone and dreamy smile are suitable for the vast fields and sunny weather, while her foggy eyes are always looking at her distant hometown and lonely mother. Sometimes I would walk slowly with her in the countryside. Listen to the whisper of love rising under her heels. Make the mother the center point, and draw the circle of the conversation material outward in circles. I like the air of the old country very much. Do you like riding horses? Riding a horse and running in the fields is a matter for young people. My mother died in the Westlake nursing home on a May night. Tuberculosis is her legacy. With this legacy, I am insulated from sports. Speaking of tuberculosis, her face was that of a neurasthenic. For her health, I thought gloomily, if she dies, I want to bury her in the lilac mound, play the mandolin, sing Chopin's Tramps, and accompany her as I do with my mother now. Thinking like this. I am in love with a girl suffering from lung disease. Suddenly one day I found out that she would feed tuberculosis bacteria. It was really painful, but is pain useful? Then why don't you live in Hong Kong? Isn't it a good sanatorium there? The southern sun will heal you. I really wish I could put her in the greenhouse and cultivate her like a flower. Carefully sprinkle water on the withered flowers. Being a gardener is a joy. I will wrap her in purple thin silk, cover the blooming stamens, and keep her there all day long to prevent bees from flying near. Yes, I love Hong Kong. Looking out the window of our house, we can see the roads in Victoria winding like snakes in the drizzle. I love that kind of sadness. But my father was lonely in Shanghai, so I came to keep him company. I loved him very much. We walked into a path with hedges made of short trees on both sides. Passing under the branches, there was sunlight leaking from the gaps in the leaves on the ground, crawling on the vines like grasshoppers. The vines always entangled her heels, and once they got entangled, she would lightly tap her feet. He frowned and said, "Disgusting." The quiet path is very long, with arms of lush summer shrubs stretching out from inside the low hedge in front of it. The blurred leaves and flowers cover the path. The ground is covered with fallen flowers, and the fern grass is resentful under the feet. He bent over and walked over, carefully walking on the loose soil mixed with flower petals. Rose branches stretched out from the strong low fence, and the thorns on the branches caught her hair. I went up to help her pick the thorns, and she tilted her head to look at it. This way. I forgot to prick Changsha's bleeding finger. Out of that path, look. Such a large wheat field, not a single house, not a single person. There was a pond over there, so we ran there and sat down. It's evening. The big bloody sun is on the other side of the sky, standing on the top of the wheat ears. The blue sky is covered with large pieces of red clouds, and the purple dusk covers the wheat fields in the distance. There are shadows of willow trees on the water, our shadows, so clear and dark. She was breathing lightly, her hair was messy, and her cheeks were pink, but these were signs of lung disease. I am depressed. Wide fields. Blue sky. The sun at dusk. And what else? And there she is the sun at dusk. But I didn't say it. Why not say it? I said, girl, I'm in love with you. But I was timid and just sighed softly, what a lovely season. Look. She stretched out her feet. The transparent, light gray silk socks were covered with caterpillar-like grass. What should I say? I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time there was a girl, she was as lovely as a flower, yes, like a lilac. There was an infatuated young man who was in love with her, but she didn't know it. The young man was by her side every day, but he was lonely and melancholy. The girl was not very healthy, and he was worried about her. He was so in love with her that he felt happy whenever he saw her. He didn't dare to ask for anything, nor did he dare to hope for anything. As long as she knew his love, he would be satisfied. But the girl didn't know. I don't know that he cries quietly every night. But who is that girl? That girl. She is a lilac-like girl. Yes, I don't know where I read a story in a book. What a lovely story, please lend me that book. I forgot the name of this book. If I find it, I will bring it to you. I just can't find it, I can tell you about it. What a lovely story. But, look, over there is my hometown. Looking at the horizon with foggy eyes. A dreamy smile hung on the corner of her mouth. My love, the love that no one knows, the silent love, is buried in my young heart. If my mother were still alive, she would know, I would tell her. I would kneel in front of her and let her stroke my hair and tell her. Her son's secret love. Mother. I also looked at the horizon, with a lonely smile on the corner of my mouth and melancholy eyes open. 5. Sitting on the stone steps in front of the classroom, I took out my mother's photo from my arms and quietly tell her, Mother. What did your father tell you when he loved you? Did he also tell you a beautiful and suggestive story? Is he as timid as me? Mother, why did you give birth to a timid son? The mother smiled and said, Naughty child. Wouldn't it be nice to fall in love in silence? I cried quietly, why did I come here late at night? The night wind is cold, the night is silent and gentle, under the dual pressure of happiness and melancholy, a child's heart is fragile. Playing the mandolin and singing quietly. Leaning against the tombstone. There is a secret in my life. A youthful love. But the girl I'm in love with doesn't know my love. I had no choice but to remain silent. I am happy to be by her side every day. but still lonely. She will not know the heart of a painful child, I had no choice but to remain silent. When she listened to this song full of her, she would say, "Who is she? Until my years are gone, I will not express my love to her." I have no choice but to remain silent. I lowered my head and silently saw Miss Ling sitting in front. Look. Like the cane of the melancholy poet Lenore, your face. Tell you, my secret. But I will never tell her the truth. I think of my mother. Then we were silent again. We often sit quietly. I don't want her to talk. It pained me to see her talking mouth. Isn't it painful to be mute if you have a mouth and can't tell your children secrets? I still don't understand why I didn't say anything at that time. I'm not a person who can't speak. But it is really a crime to treat such a pure girl at such an innocent age as the object of love. She should be worshipped like a Mary, praying for her health every night with the fervor of a martyr. Besides, she gets out of breath when she talks too much. This is harmful to her health. I would rather leave her silent. When she is silent, her hair, her closed mouth, and her delicate heels will speak a more interesting whisper than when she speaks, a fresh language that requires the sixth sense to listen. On the way back that day, there was a broken lilac in the dust. It has been practiced by others. She picked it up, wrapped it in a white handkerchief, and stuffed it in my pocket. I have a lot of these little purple flowers at home, hidden like antiques. There are ones from 3 years ago that are as dry as paper flowers. Come and have a look at my house. I have photos of my mom and photos from when I was a child to now. I also have expensive candies and a cyan study room. The next day was Sunday, and I copied that day's diary below. May 28th. I don't want to go to my father's place. I don't want to go to my mother either. In the morning, my friends invited me to go boating at Livalita. They said there were willow trees, flowers, and happy people there, and that boating in the Suzhou River was the exclusive right of Jiangnan people. I refused. They said I had changed recently. Yes, I had. I like to be alone. I often walk alone outside the school and think about it. I often have insomnia at night, but who knows how I could change? Who knew I was in love with a lonely girl? Mother knows, but she won't tell others. My own children also know it, but who should I tell? Today, Miss Ling is staying with her father at home. I sat under the shadow of a tree by a small river all day long, mute, doing nothing, wearing a broad-brimmed straw hat. Summer is coming slowly, from the fields over there. From the call of the cuckoo. The grass by the river looks like the mustache of a man who hasn't had his hair trimmed in half a year. An honest farmer with his upper body naked walking on the bank of the field. Not a single cloud in the sky. On the road, people come to the countryside to ride horses on holidays. Their white canvas breeches gleamed on horseback. I was lonely. In the evening, I put my spring clothes in the box, not going to wear them again. Tomorrow is Ling's birthday, and I want to go to her home. What gift should I give her? I want to give her a volume of Mr. Dai Wangshu's poetry, a bouquet of lilacs, and a painful heart. I won't be able to sleep tonight. 6. Water trucks hissed across the asphalt road, and Catholics in white hats murmured about their homeland. There are small Japanese parasols and silk pajamas in the window. Unexpectedly, there are already cicada sounds there. The wall is covered with vine leaves, and a banana tree is planted in front of the window, making a rustling sound. There is a small garden in front of the house, and along the street is a row of French-style low fences. Entered the low gate. Walking from the corridor to the stone steps in front of the house, the door suddenly opened, and she stood there smiling, a rare naughty smile. When I got closer, a handful of rose flower seeds were thrown in my face, and all the emerald-like seeds exploded in my face. I've seen you from the window. This is my little gift to you. Thank you, this is much cuter than the candies and jewelry they gave me. I know the things you like. Looking at her sincerely. But she won't understand my vision. I followed her in and remained silent. A simply furnished study room with windows on 3 sides. A mahogany desk is placed by the window, and in the corner there is a bookshelf containing Li Qingzhao's poems and Verlaine's poetry collection. Do you know French? Once upon a time, when my father was serving at the French embassy, he took me with him. She put my memory I gave her on the bookshelf. There was a sofa in the middle of the room, a velvet cushion, and a round table in front of it, with 2 photo albums placed on it. There is also a small sofa. Over there by the window is a single leg, with a long-necked vase and a bouquet of lilacs on it. She put the purple incense stick I gave her there. That bunch of lilacs was given to me by my father. When they wither, I will wrap them in purple silk, together with the sweater knitted by my mother. She stood there, looking at the flower. The sun filtered through the white window screen, caressing the lilac flowers and her hair, gently. There were shadows of bananas on the window screen. Quietness permeated the study. My soul, my mind, all flowed to her, stroking the lilac and her hair together with the sun's tentacles. Why only value those 2 bunches of lilacs? She turned around and looked at me with misty eyes. After a while, she said, "You don't understand." I understand. This foggy look. This moment, this sentence will always be fresh in my memory. My soul will perish, my body will decay, but this memory will always be fresh. A shadow wearing a white canvas sun hat flashed outside the window, and she jumped up and ran out. I took a look at the furnishings on the wall. There is only a silver-gray picture frame hanging, which is Monet's farmhouse painting, with lush summer colors and simple lines. Dad, go to the living room for me and deal with the guests. No, come and see him first. This is the kid I talk about all the time. His mother is Mom's neighbor. Look, he also gave me a bouquet of lilacs. She came in hiding like a bird under the shoulder of a middle-aged man. A father who has such a daughter is happy. This happy father is still carrying half a dozen cod liver oil, which reminds me of the plaster skeleton specimens in the laboratory and the Dane carrying a giant turtle on his back. His father's face still retained the charm of his youth. His body is strong. How could she give birth to a thin daughter? Looking at the petite girl lying under his arms, I felt melancholy. He handed her the coat and sun hat, took out a handkerchief to wipe the sweat on his forehead, and without saying a few words, he went out with his considerate daughter. Are there any guests in the reception room? Annoying greeter. Why don't you invite them over? This study room belongs to me, and I don't want them to come over and make trouble. I have nothing to do with it. You can go talk with them. Joan dismissed them as being rude. Didn't I promise you to look at the photos together? Then she sat on the sofa and flipped through the photo album. I got to know her mother from the photo. The corners of her mouth and thin face were very similar to hers. She brought a large box of gift candies. Eat with me. There is a photo of her in the photo album, which was taken in Hong Kong the year before last, sitting in front of a bush of lilacs, that familiar smile, familiar eyes. Her face is plumper than now, and underneath there is a line of small words, "Say it with flowers." "Who took the photo for you?" "Dad," he said and ran out. "I'll make tea for you to eat." That photo, in terms of light and shadow, is of top quality, and her dreamlike grace cannot be found in other photos. I looked at that photo with a smile on my face. But why did she let me enter her study alone? Why did she say I didn't understand? I don't understand. I don't understand. What do you mean, looking at me like that? Tell her I love her. But ask her for this photo. I will put this photo in a silver gray frame and hang it in the study together with my mother's photo. I will also put a footrest next to it with lilacs in it. I will kneel in front of it every night to pray for her. Thinking so deeply. She came in with the silver plate. He poured me a cup of milk and black tea, a banana cake, and 2 slices of bread. I made this. In Hong Kong, I always made coconut cakes and lychee cakes for my father to eat. She stood at the round table and watched me eat, childishly. "Where are your children?" "I just ate candy and I can't eat it anymore." Healthy people are happy. I am only lucky enough to eat cod liver oil. There are many lychee gardens in Guangdong, so many lychees hanging on the branches like black beads, those transparent lychee flesh. You are very happy today, isn't it? Because I am going to Hong Kong next week to follow my father. What? I forgot about the banana cake in my mouth. What's the matter? We'll come back. I couldn't eat the banana cake I was greedily eating just now, and I couldn't eat the milk and black tea I drank. Should I tell her, or not? The nervous tissue suddenly collapsed. There was no spine, no nerves. What a person without a heart. Where are we going? You should come and see me off the day after tomorrow. I'm here to see you off, but let's go see Mother together tomorrow. I was planning to go, but why don't you eat somewhere? I looked at her, silently. Should I say it or not? Don't want to eat? That's disgusting. It's the banana cake I made at home. Don't you want to eat? Frowning my brows, tapping my feet lightly, smiling, urging. Like a ruminant, I ate the banana cake, spit it out, chewed it again, and it took a long time to finish it. She sat in front of the piano and played. "Kiss me good night, not goodbye." The sentimental note swirls lazily on the lilacs, hiding behind the window. The sky gradually darkened. The dim light of dusk sneaked in through the window and filled the room. Her back is blurry and her hair is dark. After she finished playing the tune and closed the piano cover, I put on my hat and left. She walked me to the gate and said, "I am happy today. I am happy too. Goodbye. Goodbye." Raising her arms, she sent me a smile. I also smiled, walked to the road, and turned around. She was still standing by the door raising her arms to me. The string of street lights in front of me was the sign of the ladies' evening dress hem. Suddenly I found that there was a lamp hanging above my children's eyes, shining like beads, and falling down. My mother's face in the photo in my hand was blurred. "Why didn't you tell her?" He regretted it. Turning around, I saw a light green light coming from the study window facing the street. The light shines directly on the vines peeking out of the window, and what is sounding quietly and lonely is the quiet tune and loud sound of the piano. 7. The next day, I only visited the cemetery once and sat on my mother's grave. She also noticed my gloomy look. Ask me why. Tell her. I thought. After all, he said. I miss my mother. The weather was so hot that her gauze shirt had been lightly soaked with sweat on her back, and the shirt underneath proudly showed off her coquettishness. She still has to pack her bags. I urged her to go back. She didn't even say goodbye when she saw her off, and the boat slowly left the dock, but I understood what her eyes were saying. I stood on the dock and looked at the boat. She and her father stood behind the boat rail. The sea is blue. The wet wind at sea is harmful to her health. I want to bless her. A few days after she left, my father went to Tianjin for business reasons and stayed there for a few years. I also transferred to Peking. Before leaving, I gave her a letter and wrote my address in Peking. Sitting in front of the window every day, listening to the camel bells in the desert and the sound of time. There is a clear sun and blue sky here, but the kind of wind in the south of the Yangtze River does not exist here. She sent a letter from Hong Kong, saying that she would come to Shanghai next month. She said that Hong Kong was a beach. Concerts, nightclubs, and open-air dance venues are all occupied, and every day I just rely on the window bars to play with the parrots. When the second letter came, she was already in Shanghai. She said that autumn had already arrived in Shanghai, and the lilacs in front of the window were withered, so she wrapped them and put them in a jewelry box. The parrot was also brought and hung next to the one leg that held the vase. It also learned to sigh and say, dash. Mother. She added that she still went to the cemetery often, and now there were only chrysanthemums in front of the tomb. But there are only dead leaves in Beiping. In a few days. The day of scraping the yellow sand is coming soon. The time of waiting for the letter is long, but the time of reading the letter is short. I hate China Airlines. Why don't they open flights to Shanghai? The speed of the train and the president's movement in space cannot match my pulse. From the faded golden sunlight and the sound of hunting horns in the suburbs, autumn is here. I coughed. There is no fear, no sadness, no joy. I am aware of the weight of autumn. In a few days, I will have fever every night again. Cold sweat in autumn is a common thing for me. How about we go to the cemetery together again? Your mother may be missing you there. Ling, October 23rd. I had a bad cough, had a fever for 5 days, and my face turned pink. My father was worried that he would have to go to the hospital tomorrow. Every winter, I always spend the winter in a house with butterflies, cold and hot temperatures, and the smell of nitric acid. I didn't expect to go in so early this year. I hope you will write to me every day. In the hospital, this is a necessity of life. Ling, November 5th. I'm much thinner. This year's disease is more severe than in previous years. I haven't been to my mother's place for a long time. When I get better and spring comes, I want to go there every day. I miss the days when I sat in front of the grave and talked about my mother. Also, the doctor has forbidden me to write letters, and I'm afraid I won't be able to write any more in the future. Ling, November 14th. After this letter came, I was the only one who wrote to her every day, and the letters disappeared. Every time I write a letter, I always think, should I tell her? Finally, I wrote a long letter to her, telling her that I was in love with her, but the letter was returned from the post office. The paint is still intact. The envelope read, "This person has been discharged from the hospital." What's wrong? What's wrong? Are you okay? Or. Then she thought of the cod liver oil, the white sanatorium, the cold cemetery, her mother's tomb, the new grassland, the new tomb, the new evergreen tree, lilac. But the cold wind in the cemetery, the cold wind, the cold wind. He hurriedly wrote a letter to her home and waited without even having time to breathe. When the reply finally came, when I saw the old handwriting on the envelope, I felt my heart skip a beat and my body sank. Sink. The letter reads, "Young man, you are late." She was buried next to her mother's grave on December 28th. When she was dying, she left something for you. Come visit me once when you come to Shanghai. I can take you to visit her new tomb. Ouyang Su. Too late. Too late. Mother, why did you give birth to a timid son? There were no tears, no sighs, and no regrets. I just lowered my head and sat quietly. A year later, I arrived in Shanghai with my father, and it was April. I put on the clothes I wore last year and went to Miss Ling's house. It was spring again. Look, those young faces. I knocked on the door, and it was her father who opened the door. This year, he had many wrinkles on his face and was much older. He took me to Miss Ling's study. The one-legged table in front of the window was still there, and so was the vase. Everything is the same as last year, nothing has changed. He asked me to sit for a while, then ran to get me the withered lilacs wrapped in silk that I gave to Miss Ling last year, and a gold-rimmed photo album. Her inheritance was 2 bunches of withered lilacs and 2 books of photos of her own children. She told me to share them equally with you. I knew these 2 things, so I accepted them silently, remembering that there was a lilac in my pocket that she picked up from the ground for me last year. Let's take a look at her tomb. Then we left with him and bought a bunch of fresh lilacs on the way. In the suburbs, the wind from the south blew the breath of late spring, the clear sun, the blue sky, every little wild flower. They all have smiles on their faces. The fields are vast and the roads are long. The air is quiet, and the gentleman emperor on the billboard can't speak, he can only smile. Walking into the gate of the cemetery, the tombkeeper smiled happily and said, "Mr. Ouyang, the lady's tombstone has been installed." When he saw me, he said, "Long time no see." "Yes. Walk past my mother's grave." I didn't stop. Over there, on the black marble, there is a new tombstone on the white marble. The tomb of my loved daughter Ouyang Ling. I will never forget that dreamy smile, misty eyes, unhealthy complexion, and, you don't understand. I understood, but I was late. He took off his hat and so did I. March 16, 1932. Foxtrot in Shanghai, a fragment. The sea, a paradise built on hell. In the west of Shanghai, the big moon crawls on the horizon, illuminating the vast wilderness. The light gray field is covered with silvery moonlight. Then embedded with dark gray tree shadows and a lot of shadows of the village. In the field, the railroad tracks drew an arc, stretching straight from the sky to the horizontal line over there. Lincoln Road, where morality is trampled underfoot and sin held high above the head. Carrying the rice basket, I walked there alone, with one hand in my trouser pocket, watching the hot air coming out of my son's mouth slowly drifting into the blue night. 3 figures wearing long black silk gowns and black coats outside flashed. 3 faces, with only their noses and chins visible under their felt hats, were hidden in front of him. Go slowly, friend. Say whatever you have to say, friend. We all have our grievances and our debts. It's not that we have any trouble with you today. We all have our own masters, and we also have to eat. Looking back, don't blame us for not being friends enough. Today is your anniversary next year, remember? What a joke. It's not like we're not friends enough. He threw the rice basket, grabbed the man's gun with the other hand, and punched him. Touch. He let go of his hand, and the man fell down, pressing his belly. Touch. Another punch. Gun. Good boy. Yes. We will meet again in this life, my friend. Black silk skirt pushed her felt hat on her head, crossed the railway and disappeared. Help. Climb a few steps. Help. Climb a few more steps. There was a beeping sound, and the light of an arc lamp stretched out from under the horizontal line. The rails rumbled, and the sleepers on the rails crawled forward in the light like centipedes. The poles appeared, and then disappeared into the darkness. A train of Shanghai Express protruded its belly, going up, down, up, shooting with a foxtrot, holding a luminous pearl in his mouth. He ran over like a dragon and circled the arc. He roared again with his mouth open, and a line of black smoke dragged straight to his tail. The light of the arc lamp went below the horizon and disappeared after a while. It became quiet again. In front of the railway traffic gate, the light of the arc lights of cars intersects. The person in charge of the traffic gate held a red and green flag and opened the traffic gate with a white face, red lips, and ruby earrings. Immediately, cars followed the gate and flew past, in a long series. The legs of white-painted street trees, the legs of telephone poles, the legs of all still life objects, review-like. The girls stretched out their powdered thighs crosswise, a procession of white-painted legs. Along the quiet road, from the windows of the houses, like urban eyeballs, through the window screens, light red, purple, green, and lights everywhere slipped out. The car stopped in front of a small villa-style house, the horn blaring. The coral knot on Mr. Lu Yud's watermelon hat poked out from the car door. The gold watch hanging in the two small pockets of Jaimeo Kudzu's vest had a few small gold pounds on it, and he smiled brightly and sent him out of the car and sent him to the house. He threw half of the cigar outside the door, walked to the living room, and just sat down when the light heels of his shoes clicked on the carpet of the stairs. Ta-ta-ta-ta. Are you back? With lively laughter, a lady who was his daughter-in-law by age and legally his wife ran in and pulled his nose. Quick. Sign me a check for $3,000. Did the money run out again last week? Don't speak. She handed him a stack of accounts, pulled the sleeves of his blue satin robe, ran to the study, and put the pen in his hand. I said. What did you say? Xiao Hong's mouth was blocked. After taking a look at the note, she lowered her head and put her small mouth to his big mouth. You can eat dinner alone, Xiaoda and I are going out. He ran out with a smile and closed the door. He took out a handkerchief and wiped his mouth. Tanji was printed on the linen handkerchief. It's more like my daughter, who keeps asking for money all day long. Dad raised his head. Xiaoda didn't know how long he had slipped in and stood next to him, as if he had seen a cat. Why are you back again? My aunt called me to come back. What for? Get the money. Mr. Lu Yud was amused in his heart. These two women really have their own problems. Why would she ask you to come back and ask me for money? Will she fail? I want money, and my aunt asked me to accompany her to play. Suddenly the door opened. Do you have any cash? Lu Yen Rongzhu ran in again. Only. A little hand that had just used code Dan had already reached into his pocket and took out the wallet. He counted the banknotes with his red nails. 1, 5, 10, 20, 300. I'll leave you 50, and I'll take the extra. You won't get the extra at night. She winked, grabbed her legal son and left. My son is a clothes hanger, reading fashion magazines for Gigolo all day long. He put on his permed coat with thick and clear creases and tied his tie to leave a dimple in the middle. He took his mother's arm and sat in the car. The legs of white-painted street trees, the legs of telephone poles, the legs of all still life objects, review-like. The girls stretched out their powdered thighs crosswise, a procession of white-painted legs. Along the quiet road, from the windows of the residential area, like urban eyeballs, through the window screens, the light of red, purple, green and virginity sneaked out. I drive a new Buick from 1932, but I only think about the way of love in 1980. The late autumn evening wind blew, blowing the son's collar and the mother's hair, all feeling a little cold. The legal mother snuggled into her son's arms and said, "It's a pity that you are my son." He smiled. The son kissed his mother's little mouth that his father had kissed, and almost drove the car onto the sidewalk. Neon light stretched out its colorful fingers and touched the blue ink-like color. There are big characters written in the night sky. A British gentleman stood in front, wearing a red tuxedo, holding a cane, and walking in high spirits. Underfoot it reads, "Johnny Walker, still going strong." A real estate company's utopia was spread out on a small piece of grass beside the road. An American smoking custard was looking at it, as if saying, "It's a pity that this is the utopia of Lilliput. There is no room for me in that prairie. Where's 1 foot?" A personal shadow appears in front of the car. The horn roared, and the man turned his head to look, then slipped away from the wheel onto the sidewalk. "Rongju, where are we going?" "Let's go have some fun in any cabaret, Licha, I'm tired of playing in Dahua." "On the roof of the racecourse." The golden horse on the wind needle spreads its hooves towards the red moon. Surrounded by the sea of light and the waves of sin, Moor Hall was immersed in darkness, kneeling and praying for these men and women who had gone to hell. The spire of the big world refused to repent. Looking proudly at the pedantic priest, he radiated circles of light. The blue dusk enveloped the whole place, and a saxophone stretched its neck, opened its mouth, and whined at them. On the smooth floor in the middle, a skirt fluttered. The fluttering robe corners, the exquisite heels, 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 heels. Fluffy hair and manly face. Man's shirt with white collar and woman's smiling face. With outstretched arms, the jade pendant was dragged to the shoulders. The round tables were neatly arranged, but the chairs were scattered. In the dark corner stood a waiter in white. The smell of wine, perfume, the smell of British legs and eggs, the smell of cigarettes. The single man sat in the corner with black coffee to stimulate his nerves. Dancing, the melody of the waltz circles their legs, and their feet stand fluttering on the melody of the waltz. Flutteringly. The son leaned close to his mother's ear and said, "There are many things that can only be said while dancing waltz. You are the best waltz dancer, but, Rongju, I love you." Dash. Feeling that he was kissing his temples gently, the mother hid in her son's arms and smiled softly. A Belgian jewelry broker pretending to be a French gentleman leaned into the ear of movie star Ian Furlong and said, "The smile on your lips will make all the women in the world jealous, but I love you." Dash. Feeling that he was being kissed gently on his temples, he hid in his arms and smiled softly. Suddenly I saw an extra diamond ring on my finger. The jewelry donor saw Lu Yen Rongju, nodded to Ian Furlong on her shoulder, and smiled. Xiaoda turned around and saw Yin Furong raising her eyebrows in a gigolo way. Dancing. The melody of the waltz circled their legs, and their feet stepped on the waltz, fluttering, fluttering. The jewelry donor leaned close to Lu Yinrongzu's ear and whispered, "The smile on your lips will make all the women in the world jealous, but I love you." Dash. Feeling that he was being kissed gently on his temples, he hid in his arms and smiled softly, applying the rouge from his lips to his white shirt. Xiaoda leaned close to Yin Furong's ear and whispered, "There are many things that can only be said with a waltz. You are the best waltz partner, but, Fleur, I love you." I felt like I was kissing my temples gently, so I hid in my arms and smiled softly. The single person sat in the corner and took black coffee to stimulate his son's nerves. The smell of wine and perfume, the smell of eggs, the smell of smoke. In the dark corner stood a waiter in white. The chairs are messy, but the rows of round tables are neat. The jade pendant was dragged to the shoulder and the arm was outstretched. Woman's smiling face and man's shirt with white collar. Man's face and shaggy hair. Sophisticated heel, 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 heel. Heel. The flowing robe corners, floating skirts, and a smooth floor in the middle. Whining at others, the saxophone stretched its neck and opened its mouth. The blue dusk enveloped the whole place. Pushed open the glass door. This delicate illusion was broken. After running down the escalator, 2 rows of rickshaws were parked on the side of the street. The pullers stood in separate shifts, leaving a lighted road in the middle. They competed for rickshaw. Austin Children's Car, Ace-Han Kashue, Ford, Buick Sports Car, Buick 9, 8 cylinders. 6-cylinder. The big moon staggered onto the prairie of the racecourse with a red face. The man selling Damei Evening News on the street corner shouted in the voice of a pancake and fried dough stick seller. Evening Post. The tram drove into a dangerous area full of advertising banners and signboards for big sales, and the bicycles crowded beside the tram looked pitiful. The sailor sitting on the rickshaw narrowed his drunken eyes, saw the rickshaw pullers but kicked it and laughed. Red traffic lights, green traffic lights, traffic light poles and Indian policemen are vertical on the ground. As soon as the traffic light flashes, there is a wave of people and cars. These many people are like flies without heads. A fashionmonger pretended to be a lady by wearing clothes from her shop. The elevator throws people to the roof garden at a speed of 15 seconds. The female secretary stood outside the window of the satin shop and looked at the all-silk French crepe, remembering the smile on the manager's mouth that was scratched with scars. The activists and party members walked over with a large package of leaflets, thinking to themselves, "If caught, I will give a speech here." The girl with blue eyes wore a narrow skirt, and the girl with black eyes wore a long cheongsam, with the same charming look between her legs. Next to the street, in an open space, a tall wooden frame like a pyramid was erected, with thick wooden legs stuck in the mud. An arc lamp was installed on the top, which illuminated the people on every horizontal plank below. These people shouted, "Hey!" The wooden piles on the top of the wooden frame several hundred feet high fell straight down, hit. A 3-arm-thick wooden pillar was knocked into the mud, with arc lights installed on all 4 corners. Strong light illuminated the clearing. In the open space, horizontal and vertical trenches, steel frames, and piles of rubble. People carry big wooden pillars and walk in the ditch, dragging long shadows. The foot in front slipped and he fell, with the wooden post pressing on his spine. The spine was broken, and there was a mouthful of blood in the mouth, arc light. Bump. The wooden stakes slid up the wooden frame again. The naked children rolling coppers on the cinder block. The arc lamp on the top of the big wooden frame looked like the moon in the night sky. The wife picking up cinders. There are two moons. The moon was swallowed by the Tengu. The moon was gone. The dead bodies were moved away, and in the open space. There were horizontal and vertical ditches, steel bones, rubble, and a pile of his blood. On top of the blood, shimmin soil was spread, steel frames were built, and a new hotel was built. A new dance hall has been built. A new hotel is being built. Give him his strength and his blood. It was the same as other hotels, just like the Huadong Hotel that Mr. Liu Yud had just stepped into. In the Huadong Hotel. Second floor, white painted room, bronze scent of opium, sparrow cards, Shiro visits his mother. The little white whore, cologne and lust, waiters in white, prostitute donors, kidnappers, conspiracy and tricks, white Russian Ronin. Third floor, white painted room, bronze scent of opium, sparrow cards, Silang visits his mother, Chang San scolds by Shaowan. Cologne and lust, waiters in white, prostitute brokers, kidnappers, plots and tricks, white Russian Ronin. Fourth floor, white painted room, bronze opium scent, sparrow card, Shiro visits his mother, Chang San scolds the white little whore, cologne and lustful smell, white waiter. Prostitute brokers, kidnappers, plots and intrigues, white Russian Ronin. The elevator spit him out on the fourth floor. Mr. Liu Yud hummed Silang visits his mother and stepped into a room with the sound of dominoes. He ordered gelatin and wrote a ticket. Soon, he also sat down. Beside the table. He grabbed the stroke of a stroke with a skillful technique, as if he was afraid of bruising it, but at the same time said, "Why can't I get a good one?" with an old face, but listened attentively. The words of Baoyue Laoba, who was called Sullivan's bread because he didn't tie his chest. "I'm sorry, Mr. Liu, but I still have a note. Please come and sit down when Huier finishes wiping the cards. Come and sit at our house." Standing on the street corner, all you can see is the gray face with black eyes, hiding in the shadow of the building, shouting to the passers-by, like a clerk from an auction house. The old bustard was trailing behind like his tail. "Come and sit at our house," said the flat-mouthed man, deliberately bumping into someone with a flat face. Smiling with a flat face, he took a look, pointed at his nose, and poked his head. "What an old man, do you want to touch the uncle? You're young, friends are important." He smiled. "I never thought that a pretty Indian girl like me would be looked down upon today." He wiped his hand on her face and left. Next to him, a writer with long hair and an unshaved beard was looking at it funny, and he thought of a topic in his mind. The second tour. The dark side of the city inspected Sonata. Suddenly he saw the pouty eyes on his face, and he immediately ran forward in a panic. Limeface hiding in the shadows, the madam trailing behind like his tail, Limeface hiding in the shadows, Limeface. Limeface. The writer thinks to himself. The first inspection of casinos, the second inspection of street prostitutes, the third inspection of dance halls, and the fourth inspection of Oriental Magazine, Novel Monthly, and Literary Monthly, the first sentence of Main Street Beijing Road Pheasant Exchange. No. Someone pulled his sleeve. "Sir." It turned out to be an old woman with a sad face, raising her head and looking at him. "What for?" "Please show me a letter." "Where is the letter?" "Please follow me to your home to get it." "It's in this alley." "Then follow." The tragedy of China must have novel information here. 1931 is my era. Oriental novels and Baidu have a monthly single line. Japanese translations, Russian translations, and translations in various countries are published. Nobel Prizes, Greatness, and Wealth. I turned into a small alley and it was so dark that I couldn't see anything. Where is your home? It's right here, not far away, sir. Please read this letter. There is a yellow street lamp on the other side of the alley, and under the lamp a woman is standing there with her head lowered. My wife suddenly put on a sad face again. He pulled his sleeve and said, "Sir, this is my wife, and the letter is with her." When he reached the woman's place, before she even raised her head, the wife said, "Sir, this is my wife. My son is a machine builder. He took advantage of other people's things and got caught. It's a pity that we ladies haven't had anything to eat in 4 days. Isn't it true that with such a good subject matter and technical skills, what she said must be correct? She is not afraid of people calling me humanitarian. Sir, poor thing, please give me some money. I asked my wife to stay with you for 1 night and save both of our lives." The writer was stunned. The woman raised her head, 2 shadows trailed on her thin cheeks, and a smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. A smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. The Belgian jewelry broker posing as a French gentleman leaned close to Lu Yinrongzu's ear and whispered, "The smile on your lips will make all the women in the world jealous. Have a drink." Dash. On the tall glass, Lu Yinrongzu's 2 eyes were smiling. In Bicky. Those 2 eyes soaked in cocktail smiled from the leather collar of the coat. In the corridor of the Chinatown Hotel, those 2 cocktail-soaked eyes were smiling from the side of the disheveled hair. On the elevator. Those 2 eyes were smiling under the purple eyelids. In a room on the 7th floor of the Hua Tu Hotel, those 2 eyes were smiling on the burnt red cheeks. The jewelry broker discovered the pair of smiling eyes under his son's nose. Smiling eyes. White bed towels. Gasping. He lay on the bed panting and motionless. Bedcloth, melted snow. Let's organize an international club. I suddenly got such a good idea, and I was sweating. Sweating dripping from his eyes, he dragged the drunken sailor to the wine rose on the quiet street. On the street. There are no patrols anymore, it's so quiet, like a dead city. The sailor's leather shoes were placed on the backbone of the cart, and his hoarse voice sounded on the wall of the big building, dash. Later. Laid. La dear. Lad. The face of the puller was sweating, the money was rolling in the heart of the puller. Flying and rolling. The drunken sailor jumped down suddenly and fell behind 2 glass doors. "Hello, master. Master." He yelled and chased him to the door. The Indian patrolman waved his stick at him, and laughter squeezed out from the crack in the door. The smell of wine squeezed out from the crack in the door, and jazz squeezed out from the crack in the door. The driver pulled the lever, and what was in front of him was the river breeze in December, a cold moon, and a deep alley in the middle of a large building. Even though he was thrown out of joy, he didn't even think of committing suicide, only mothers. After cursing, he walked back to life. The rickshaw was empty, and there was only moonlight on the street. The moonlight illuminated half of the street, and the other half was immersed in darkness. In this darkness squatted the wine restaurant, with a green light on the forehead of the wine restaurant. Under the blue light stood a fossil-like Indian policeman. Opening and closing the door, he said like a parrot, "Goodbye, sir." A young man walked out of the glass door, with a cane hanging from his elbow. He walked from the light into the darkness. He walked from the darkness to the moonlight again, sighed, and walked forward quietly. Thinking of his lover sleeping in someone else's bed, he walked to the river and stood beside the railing in a daze. In the eastern sky, the sun's rays opened like golden eyes in the dark clouds. In Pudong. A man's highest voice. Ah, ah, ah. After flying straight for half a day, we met the first line of sunlight, and then came a majestic chorus. The sleeping building stood up, raised his head, took off his gray pajamas, and the river flowed eastward again. The factory whistle also roared, singing about new life, the fate of people in the nightclub. Wake up, Shanghai. Shanghai, a paradise built on hell. Night. There is no sorrow, no joy, an emotional vacuum. But where to go? The river water rushed to the shore. He went back with foam at his mouth. The night sky is dark blue, the moon is big, and the yellow moon in the center of the river is curved and polygonal. From Pudong to Puxi, on the river, the moonlight shines for miles, dragging the big moon on the stern of the boat. A small sampan sailed over in the moonlight, and the man rocking the boat had silver hair. A customs bell sounded on the river. The wind blew, blowing up the collar of the sailor's suit, and flicking the cigarette butt into the water. The night in May, gentle and gentle. He was always going from one port to another, wearing his white sailor hat crookedly, letting the wind blow his collar, and swinging his big trousers, wandering alone in the night city like a night wanderer. In the coconut groves of Cuba, I heard the singing of girls selling coconuts. Looking at the red flowers on Carmen's black temples in the narrow streets of Madrid, and drinking tea from Mrs. Kikuko's hand in a small house in Kobe, he was lonely. A sailor, a gypsy of the sea. Where is home? Home. Go ahead. Then he left, lazily. Pairs of men and women were walking on the sidewalk, and a small girl sat in the middle of the big sailor in the streetcar. The driver of the cart asked him with a smile on his face if he wanted to play with the girl, and he could take him there. There is no sorrow, no joy, an emotional vacuum. Is it really a vacuum? Have a drink, drunk people are happy. Isn't Shanghai the kingdom of happiness? I turned a corner and walked into a dance hall. The stimulating smell of alcohol, the dancing steps of the sailor with his shoulders slanted and his feet tapping, and the pounding of the big drum echo the mood of the hot south. The wine glasses and bottles lying on the ground, the yellow wine, the strong eroticism, these familiar and cordial old friends. But that rough drunkard's laugh was a little too loud. He sat down at the table and drank wine. He knew the smell of alcohol. As intoxicating as a May night. The big trumpet blew repeatedly. I know that one day I'll find her, dash. The lover in my wandering dream. The dancers seemed to have lost their souls and melted into the music, and he wanted to melt there too. But Guang felt that he could not flow there, but was just molded there, because he had a fossil-like state of mind and emotional vacuum. There are a few girls I have long forgotten. Forgetting her is like a cloud at dusk. A few of them still remain in my memory. On the surface of the water. In the smoke, on the flowers, dash. She always said to me, "See? I'm here." Because he has a fossilized state of mind and emotional vacuum, because he drinks alone, because drinking alone is boring, because there is no girl to accompany him. There is a girl sitting on the table on the right, with a half cup of coffee. Wearing a black gown and a wide belt, looking from the side, She has a high nose, delicate mouth corners, long eyebrows, and an unpowdered face. She holds her chin collar in her hand, looking haggard. Her hair and heels are lonely. He took a deep puff of the cigarette and flicked the hot cigarette butt in front of her. When she turned around, he touched her nose with his big finger like a seasoned expert and nodded to her. Hello, baby. She stood up and walked over. She just looked at him coldly, with an expressionless face. The eyeballs are full of dust, and the lips are a little crooked from smoking too much. Alone? Silently, he picked up the coffee and drank some. Judging from the way she drank coffee, it seemed that she was in love with life and had no attachment to or dislike of anyone. But her gaze was tired. Who are you waiting for? He took out a cigarette and handed her one. She took the cigarette, lit it without saying anything, took a puff, and blew out the smoke. I blew out the match, folded the match stem, and looked at the cigarette in my hand, and slowly said, "Waiting for a man like you. You look very lonely. Isn't it?" "I always look lonely." He smiled faintly. Suddenly the laughter disappeared. Why? Isn't there loud laughter and too strong wine here? She just looked at him through the smoke. There's also crazy music. But why do you look so lonely? He just stood up and pulled her away. Dance towards that big horn. Dancing? There are so many people here, such bright clothes, such fragrant whiskey, such lovely women, such gentle melody, everyone has a smile on their face, but the smile seems hard. Pile up. A drunkard slipped hard and everyone burst into laughter. As soon as he got up, he fell to the ground again. He grabbed the other person's leg, raised his head and asked, "Where is my nose?" His companion pulled him up, and he kept squealing. He heard her laughing in his arms. "I never thought I would meet you today. I have been looking for a girl like you for a long time." "Why are you looking for a girl like me?" "I love the haggard face, the lips that have been kissed by many people, the black eyes, the tired look." "Have you been to many places?" "I have been to every place where there is water, and I have a home everywhere." "Have you loved many women?" "But I'm looking for a girl like you." "So you look very lonely." "So you look very lonely too." He hugged her a little tighter. She pressed against him, then raised her head and looked at him quietly. He didn't understand her eyes. Behind those transparent eyes are the secrets of the sea and 20 years of wandering. But he loves that kind of vision. He loves things that his own son cannot understand. Back to the table. Then he looked at her through the wine glass. "Where do you live?" "Why are you asking him?" "Can you tell me your name?" "Why ask him?" "I have too many names." "Why don't you tell me at all?" "Is there still time for us to meet after tonight? It's good to know that there is a person like me." "Why do you have to know who I am?" "I know that one day I will find her, the lover in my wandering dream. He tilted his neck and drank a drink, and his mood became brighter. "It's so cute, a girl." Someone tapped him hard on the shoulder. "Did you see my nose?" It turned out to be the drunkard. "You left your nose at home and didn't take it out." The wine was still on his neck, and he suddenly started coughing. Home. Home. He laughed fiercely, looked at the girl, stretched out his hand and lifted her chin. "Where do you think my home is?" She lazily pulled away his hand. "Tell you, my home is inside my nose. Today I left my nose at home and forgot to take it out." His partner just ran over and wanted to pull him back. He laughed when he heard what he said. A girl at the table on the left side teased him so much that he spit out a mouthful of wine. But she raised her head and looked at him with pity, as if looking at a motherless child. He crippled his leg and almost fell down, but his partner held him up. "Let's go back." "Okay, see you later." He waved his hands and then, "I'm going back, going home, going home." He sang like that, clapped his legs and ran to join the dancing people, always bumping into others. When he arrived, his son shouted the command, stood at attention, and saluted. After a while, he disappeared over there. But his voice was still full, and he lowered the loudspeaker to suppress his laughter. "I'm going back, going home, going home." It sounded monotonously and rudely, like a broken gramophone. She breathed lightly. They are all people without a home. Where is home? Home. There were no trumpets, no flutes, no cymbals, and no bass drums. A single violin played a melancholy tune in a low voice. Then I remembered that evening in Hawaii, leaning against the coconut trees, playing the accordion and watching the vast sea and blurry sun. There was another soft sigh, and she somehow had the look of a neurasthenic patient, depressed but happy. But a moment later, there was another cold face that he couldn't understand. "I seem to have seen you somewhere. I seem to have seen you somewhere, but I can't remember." So he drank in silence. 1 glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses. There are days when alcohol can't relieve sorrow. His face turned red, but his heart became heavy. You can be happy. When the time comes, just have fun for a while. She stood up abruptly, put a hand on his shoulder, and then retreated lively to the middle floor, walked a few steps, turned around, thrust her arms into her waist, and smiled at him strangely, pretending he made a face and danced tango. Then he turned around a few times. She returned to his arms, bent back, turned away, and lay flat on his arms, holding onto his chest with her left hand. The slow drum thump 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 thump. Her legs suddenly softened, her head rested on his chest, and she smiled. "I'm drunk. Find a place to sleep." She was leaning all over him, getting heavier and heavier. When she walked outside the door, her eyelids were closed, with a smile still on her lips. In the May night wind, her clothes were thin. But the night in May is gentle, gentle. There is no one on the street. Walking silently, walking. I went to a hotel, put her on the bed, turned off the lights, and stood in front of the window in the dark, smoking a cigarette. The moonlight streamed in from the window and looked like a square of water on the ground. Blue smoke flew out of the window in circles, slowly fading into the night. "No more. Give me a cigarette." I gave her a cigarette and she lit it and started puffing on it. The red fire on the cigarette but shines. Lying flat on the bed, putting his arms under his head, his face was pale. He walked to the bed, put one foot on the bed, and looked at her. She only looked at the ceiling. He spit out the cigarette, but he was smoking on the ground, picked her up, and kissed her mouth without saying a word. He saw a pair of indifferent eyes under his face, cold. She pushed his face away and took a drag on her cigarette. He laughed violently, took the cigarette butt, dragged his ear and blew the entire cigarette into his mouth. After patting his face, he carried her to the mirror, breathed in the mirror, and drew a heart with his finger on the mist. She also breathed a sigh of relief. Also draw a heart, and then draw an arrow to string the two hearts together. Then he took out some face powder and put it on top, then smeared it all over his face. Big baby. While talking and laughing, she hugged his neck, pressed her face against his, and swung her legs around his arms. Suddenly he felt his face getting wet. When he looked at her, his eyes were covered with tears. What's the matter? Where are you going tomorrow? I don't know, I have to go with the ship. But why talk about him? Tomorrow is tomorrow. There was a smile behind the tears as she kissed him. Enthusiastically. He woke up, stood up, saw the girl sleeping next to him, and remembered what happened last night. 2 high-heeled shoes fell on the bed. Look at the watch. The watch has not been removed. It has stopped. He climbed out of bed gently, smoking a cigarette and getting dressed. Take the money out of your pocket and put half of it next to her pillow. She put out a few more cigarettes, turned around and saw the mirror with 2 hearts and an arrow on it, so she put down the half of the money and opened her eyes. Are you leaving? He nodded. She looked at him. He still had that haggard, cold expression. What's wrong with you? I have no idea. What will happen to you next? I have no idea. Will there be a chance to see you again in the future? I have no idea. Then he lit up a cigarette and smoked it. Goodbye. She sighed and said, remember my name is Indy. Then he left, humming, dash. I know that one day I will find you, dash. The girl in my wandering dream. The lotus falls. Wandering, the ground is like sodium yellow leaves in autumn, one mountain after another, one water after another, we are 2 people. And a pair of sandalwood boards and a huchin. Together, from this city to that city, in front of the firewood gate of the thatched house, in front of the black gate embedded in the middle of the palace wall, on the street, in the examination room, we sang Lotus Falling and turned a copper into others, turn into a cup of soup, turn into a bowl of cold rice. We are 2 people. Yes. We are 2 people, but she died yesterday. 20 years ago, when my hair was as black as my eyes, the soldiers bombed my home. The whole family died and ran away without knowing where they were. I ran south alone. When I got really tired in the evening, I ran to the pavilion in front of me. That's where I met her. She was inside, sitting on the ground crying, sobbing so hard. I was still shy at that time, so I sat farther away. She glanced at me furtively. The crying was quieter. I thought to myself, please persuade her. Why is this girl crying here alone? Stop crying, girl. Why are you crying? I said to her while sitting far away. She kept crying, but she just cried louder. Isn't this a bad thing? I dare not speak anymore. I looked outside the pavilion, not daring to look at her. It was dark, and a crescent moon was shining on those fields. I can't find any fire, not far away. A dog stood outside the pavilion and looked at me. I remember it was a black dog. We also have a black dog at home and our cow is yellow. There is also a black chicken with nice-looking feathers. I have wanted to kill it for 3 years but have not had the heart to kill it. We also have a tabby cat. My sister loves that cat the most, and my father hates it because it loves to steal. But my mother loves my sister, and my father loves me. That tabby cat ate something secretly, and Dad wanted to chop its head off. My father would hit my sister when she wouldn't let go. My mother would hit me when she heard her cry. When I made a fuss, my father and mother would start to fight. But where is Dad? Where have my mother and sister gone? And what about the black dog, the ox, and the tabby cat? Where have they gone? I wanted to cry even as I thought about it. But she didn't know when she stopped crying. I turned my head to take a look, and she quickly turned her head back too. She was afraid of being embarrassed and wouldn't let me see her face, so I looked at her from behind. She didn't know what she was eating there, but it was so sweet that she could swallow it. I swallowed hard, and it sounded like thunder late at night. She turned her head to look, and I swallowed hard for some reason, and she burst into laughter. I was so embarrassed. She took out a steamed bun and held it with her arms stretched out from a distance. Regardless of my embarrassment, I ran over to eat with a red face, not daring to speak. After I finished eating, I watched her eat. She still had 5 more. As soon as she raised her head, I quickly turned my eyes to the side. But she gave me another one. My face was really red and hot. "Thank you," I said. After eating, she gave me 2 more. "Thank you so much," I said. "Do you want more? How can I say it's not enough? I say enough is enough. Aren't you hungry? Such a man eats so much. If you're not hungry, why are you here alone? The whole family is dead." Her eyelids turned red and she wanted to cry again. I hurriedly kept silent. After a while, when she was well, I said, "What's the matter?" "They fought and killed our whole family." "Where are you going?" "Where can I go?" "Where are you going to escape?" "I have no intention of escaping anywhere. I brought a few steamed buns with me and ran here. How about you?" "I didn't even bring any food, and I didn't ask the soldiers to kill me. I'm still lucky. So where can I plan to run?" "It doesn't matter where you run." At that time, we were sitting closer and closer. I waved my hand and touched her hand. I smiled and moved away embarrassedly. "Would you rather sit further away?" I moved away a little bit and sat talking to each other from a distance. It was really getting late, the stars in the sky were so dense. You squeezed me, I squeezed you, as if I wanted to squeeze someone down. The grass outside the pavilion was wet with dew, and a few fallen trees in the distance extended their branches toward the moon. A gust of wind blew over, and I felt a little cold. A night bird called outside the pavilion. The sound was quite strange, like a ghost crying, and it was chilling. Then came a gust of wind. She drew her neck back and shivered. I glanced at her. "Would you rather sit over here?" she said. "Are you cold?" "I'm afraid." I moved over and sat down next to her. As soon as I got close to her body, she shrank and said, "You don't know how," and looked at me. I shook my head. She leaned on me and said, "I'm tired." Just closed his eyes. I looked at her and lost all my fatigue and loneliness. I think, I am not living alone in the world, I am in this pavilion with her, we are 2 people. Get up the next day. She has burnt red cheeks, unruly eyebrows, and the virginity in her eyes was stolen by a thief last night. She looked at the sky, at the sun, and then at me, then she covered her face and started crying. I didn't dare to say anything, I knew I had done something wrong. She cried for a while, then raised her head, pointed her finger at my nose and said, "It's all you." I lowered my head. "You said you wouldn't." "I can't think of it." She cried again, crying for a while and said, "What do you want me to do?" "Let's go together. Let's go south together." I didn't know where to go. She didn't speak on the way, and I didn't dare to speak either. When we got to a town, she said, "I'm really hungry." I ran to a big cake shop and begged the shopkeeper, "Sir, please take pity on me. I'm starving. My whole family was beaten by the soldiers. I knelt all day and night. Nothing to eat." The shopkeeper didn't seem to hear. I had to walk away, and she was standing there at the corner, waiting for me with a complaining face. I had no choice but to walk in front of a silk and satin shop, and somehow I remembered the lotus fell, and he lowered his head. "Hey, hey. Flowers bloom and plum blossoms fall. A plum blossom blooms. Winter sweet." I felt my face getting red, and there were many people watching me around. I really wanted to crawl into the ground. At this time, I suddenly heard someone singing along with me. When I saw it, it was her. I picked up 2 pieces of broken bamboo from somewhere. I held them in my hands and patted them proudly. I became so angry that I immediately puffed up my chest, raised my head, and sang "Lotus Falling" loudly. We were 2 people singing. From that day on, I wandered like autumn leaves. From this city to that city. Later, we got another broken huqin, and together with the huqin and the sandalwood board, we walked together, mountain after mountain, water after water, in front of the wood door of the thatched cottage and in front of the black door, singing the Lotus Falls. Last night we were sitting in a small alley. She was a little cold, so she snuggled next to me, looked at my hair and said, "Your hair is a little gray too. Isn't it true? If you are over 40, your hair will not turn gray. It has been more than 20 years since we ran away from the pavilion. Almost 30 years. Time flies so fast. Do you still remember, one year when we were in Hunan, we didn't get anything to eat for 3 days? You were so angry at that time that for some reason you hit me as soon as you came, leaving a big bruise on my waist. Do you remember? Didn't you scratch my face? Isn't that night in the pavilion very much like today?" I raised my head. Over the eaves, there was a crescent moon, shining all the black tiles into silver dot. "But I am so tired." She leaned her head on my shoulder. It was so heavy. I didn't pay attention to it. "Just look at the moon," but she just dies like that. Along with a pair of sandalwood boards and a huqin, together, water after water, mountain after mountain, in front of the wood door of the thatched cottage, in front of the black gate, on the street, in the wheat field, we sang together the Lotus Falls. We laughed and cried together, sighed together and wiped tears together. There is me and she in the world. We are 2 people. Yes, we are 2 people,